Hello everyone, today I will be talking about the entire history of Acre R rather than a joke video. The topic I am specifically going to be talking about is something that I have wanted to share for years. Just a warning, first of all though, this video is going to go into heavy detail about multiple horrible things that have occurred over the years, and if you feel uncomfortable at any time then click off the video. If you relate to a situation like this, please talk to someone about it. What I am going to talk about has led to so many people being harmed mentally and physically, some even taking their whole life because of situations like this. There are people to talk to. Please do not hesitate to speak to someone you trust if something like this is happening. If you feel something is wrong, then it probably is. Don't stay in situations, get out of them as fast as you can as soon as you see red flags. There are so many people that can help you, and with that being said, I will begin. So let's just start. What on earth is an Acre R? Well, just as a brief introduction, Acre R was a group evolving from 4 people to around 180. It was based on Telegram, as Telegram had absolutely horrible filters and systems. It was formed by 4 guys who I will call Alexander, Mickey, Luke, and Ak. Slowly, it went from a group chat just with these 4 people to a group of 20. This was between June 2017 and December 2020. After December 2020, it stayed around the same until May 2023, after absolutely horrific events had happened. At this point, all 4 of the founders were dead or in jail. After this, Acre R grew exponentially as they accepted members from anyone from March 2024 to January 2026 when Acre R was shut down. So that's the brief introduction. I guess it is time for me to go into a crazy amount of detail, and this is going to be a really interesting video to create. I haven't ever made a video like this before. The beginning, our story starts with 4 19-year-olds, the first being Alexander, who I will refer to as Alex. All of them were 19 years old when early Acre was created. Alex was born in Italy, however moved to the UK at a very young age. He only spoke English and had a normal school life until the age of 15. In the final year of high school, he met a guy called Mickey. They made friends as both really enjoyed games such as Call of Duty. They were both failing school and decided to just throw their final year away, and I believe both just about passed everything but could have easily gotten more. They both then went to college together. I tried finding out what they studied, but there is absolutely nothing about this in any archive. They did complete all their years at college. However, neither of them wanted to go to university. So the normal thing to do was for them to get a job or take a break year or something. And so they did nothing all year. At the end of college, they had met 2 Americans online who had been friends for 8 years, Luke and Ak. These 4 ultimately became huge friends, however, they all had big problems. At this point, Alex and Mickey were just decently normal teens. However, over the college years, Mickey had developed a severe alcohol problem, smoking addiction, and addiction to staring at unclothed pictures of women. Alex must have seen this as cool and also began drinking and smoking, however not as much as Mickey, but he was into the other stuff just as much. They had met these 2 Americans who also had similar problems and interests to them, and they quickly bonded and used Discord in 2016 and early 2017 to talk. These guys were not using Discord for its intended purpose though, they were far from that. They were bored teenagers, enjoyed mass raiding people's DMs with horrible content and insults, and overall were just absolute horrible people online. They would get banned from Discord several times and would target communities for days straight with no sleep. Eventually, they got bored of Discord as people were not giving them reactions anymore, so they moved to Telegram. And on June 8, 2017, they formed a group chat. Not just any group chat, but the group chat known as a group. Yes, they called it a group. That was the name of the group till 2020. They used this group to talk about games, groups they would target, share their disgust with each other, and it was like that until around October. This is where everything went wrong though. We were exiting the first era. This era of Acre R was, I guess, not okay, but nothing too severe. They rated and shared 18+ content, only to the 4 adults in the group chat. However, that ends here. The group had not changed very much, but Luke was becoming increasingly worse with his 18+ content addiction. He had several weird likings, such as becoming fond of the thing that would now turn it illegal. He would now be sharing cheese pizza in the group. The other members were not interested in this, but didn't stop him. Luke had developed a liking towards doing inappropriate acts to decomposing organisms. This is absolutely disgusting and led to him doing something absolutely horrible. At the end of November 2017, it is said that he had taken at least one, potentially more, quite young babies. This was absolutely crazy, and the other members didn't even know. It is unknown the condition of them, whether they were alive or not beforehand, or he was the one who put them down. He left them rotting and then put them in his fridge. He would please himself in a very, very weird way with these, stating online they were his new toys and that all dolls should be replaced with these. The police would track him down after only around a week and a half, raiding his apartment and arresting him. The police never disclosed much about him, and only surface-level knowledge is known about him to this day. It is presumed that he was given a prison sentence where he would never be released. Acre R was now at its lowest. It had 3 members, and Ock was on his own in America. He paid for his own trip to the UK, using a bit of Luke's money and being funded by Alex and Mickey. He would stay with Alex and Mickey for 2 weeks, and according to Ock, they were all being dirty with each other while they were there. After Ock went home, the group stayed as it was before, just without Luke, until around May 2018. They were starting to get really bored again, and they wanted change. Alex officially stated he was the leader of the group and that from now on the group would function as a private group, yet allowing some people in. Alex officially grouped the group into 3 sections: main leader, leader, and member. Alex would be the main leader, Mickey and Ock would be leaders, and any new would be members. I mean, it seemed like a happy group for now, but it seemed that Mickey was really struggling with depression behind the scenes. He usually was under some influence, but when he wasn't, it was said he acted very differently and avoided a lot of contact. Mickey would resort to other substances throughout the next few years due to this. The 3 had been getting into playing a game which at the time was kind of targeted towards kids, a game called Roblox. Roblox changed everything. Welcome to Roblox. I am sure all of you know what Roblox is, but I'll do a brief summary just to fit our scenario. Roblox is an online platform where at the time you could create whatever you wanted. I do have to admit the moderation now is quite a lot better. People say their moderation is bad now, but during 2019 to 2024 it was truly horrible. This is heavily important for later. During the time up to the May 2018 revolution of their group, they mostly played Roblox together, usually playing role-playing games to annoy kids. They did this through harmful and harmless ways. Sometimes they might have done the classic stroller trollings or bought admin within the game and flung them. Other times they thought it would be funny to say the most despicable things to them or advertise really bad stuff. Overall though, the 3 were unemployed young adults and had nothing else to do, so I guess they burnt time by doing this. However, as I said above, they got quite sick of doing this between the 3 of them, so the idea was proposed to turn Acre R into some kind of server. Their plan was to reach out to some of their friends to fill up Acre R. Mickey invited his friend called Louise, then the month after Ock invited Big to the server. The server would gradually grow, and the people they brought were interesting people at the time. To be fair, Acre R, beside the many weird things going on behind the scenes, was actually a decent place at the time. It was quite stable. The following month, Martha would be invited, the first woman in Acre R. She joined in July 2018 and would be the final person to join during 2018. Following this, Acre R would actually start to go a bit dry. Although they had gathered some people, they still weren't doing anything new. That would change though in 2019. Early 2019 truly shook Acre R. Early 2019 was the first period of chaos in Acre R, but this time it wasn't between the higher-ups and the members, unlike later on. The leaders of Acre R were actually not doing too bad. Mickey had actually reshaped his life a bit through therapy, and there was signs that Acre R could go irrelevant. Less messages were sent each day, however, nobody knew, but behind the scenes something was cooking. Alex told nobody he had insanely fallen off. He was doing horrible things to himself, fueled by multiple addictions, and couldn't stop. He was practically put in Mickey's situation from before, but worse. This was not noticed until he started publicly sharing him doing bad things to himself, and by this, I mean he got good at chopping food up. You can infer what I mean from that, but the cracks slowly opened in Acre. Mickey began to notice Alex's situation and asked him if he needed help, and Alex refused. By February, a new person, Val, had joined Acre R. Everyone wanted to help Alex, as Acre R was actually going really well as a community during this time. However, Alex wanted other things. Alex hated that Acre R was actually doing well as a community, and it wasn't without him. And finally, Mickey requested something that really annoyed him. Mickey asked Alex if Alex wanted to step down after Alex not engaging at all with the group for almost a month. This annoyed Alex heavily and he responded with pure anger. According to some people, Mickey lost his permissions. This is not confirmed though. They were always fighting in Acre R. Some people just joined Alex's side for safety, whereas others wanted Mickey to become the main leader of Acre R. This sent Alex down a horrible spiral. It made him think the whole world hated him. He already barely left his room, his hygiene was lacking, and all he did was sit on his computer for 18 hours a day. But slowly, the drama did actually die down. By April, both parties hated each other, but permissions were restored and peace was restored. In April 2019, Alex allowed Big to invite his friend, Shad. Shad marked the first of the second-generation Acre members. Shad was a huge supporter of Alex, and Shad wanted to help Alex fix up the server a bit, so he was promoted to be a leader in late May 2019, under a month after he joined. Shad wanted to change the server up a bit and really got server members into role-playing. Shad was a huge fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, and so was a lot of the other members, such as Big, Ock, Val, and others. Shad proposed the idea of turning the entire server into a Sonic server, but this was rejected. However, Shad would forever want this server, and eventually he would create it, but not for a while. The server would be at quite a peace and a happy peace. Shad brought both parties together, but that would end in June 2019. Almost everyone in Acre had different views for the future of the server, and the man who loved fighting the most, Alex of course, had to be the main one. He was struggling with a lot. Joining this was a huge mistake. During the brawls throughout June, July, and August, Alex allowed Big to invite a new person to the server, someone called Jevil. Alex did not want this guy in the server as he distrusted a lot of people, but at last he let it slip and allowed him into the server. However, this was almost the ending point. There was a brawl between Mickey and Alex as usual, but this time, Alex had enough. And by enough, he was saying nobody would care if I was gone, and then he said, I'll have a better life in heaven, and he was gone. He left Acre R, giving Shad ownership. Shad said he did not want this. He was young teen at the time and didn't want the hassle of managing a bunch of crazy adults. So Mickey persuaded Shad to pass him the ownership. After only 3 hours, Mickey finally got what he wanted. On August 3rd, Mickey invited a friend he had met from one of his friends, Alfie, also known as me, and this was my first step into Acre R. I was quite shocked with what I had just stepped into. Learning that the previous owner had died 2 days before shocked me. But before this, I had been exposed to some really bad things, therefore I kinda just forgot about it after a day, and thought I had finally found the cool club I wanted to be in. Acre R was quite peaceful from there on. Mickey was much stricter than Alex though, not wanting any brawls. He took total control. Leaders basically only could suggest things now, not do anything. Mickey was learning how to program at the time as he planned to make a Roblox game. I was also a huge Roblox fan as I met Mickey on a game called Block 8. At that time, I was also playing Block 8 with a person called Darwin, also known as Original King. Darwin owned an ARG at the time called Original's Household. I used to play this game all the time, and we used to have a small investigating group, me, Log, and Zen. Zen would quit shortly after. Me and Log really loved investigating, and we became decent friends. On October 30th, Darwin officially joined Acre R. Original's ARG slowly died down though. It was getting repetitive, and Block 8 had quite a lot of limits to it. I would play other games with Log. We would build our Block 8 worlds, however, I would mostly work with Original at the time. I added Log on Steam at the time, and thank God I did, as I lost my Roblox account in February 2020 due to a virus in one of the games I made when I was younger. Me and Log realized Steam was a horrible place to chat, therefore in January 2020 I invited him to Acre R as I was the most active there. He happily joined, and Mickey was happy enough to let him in. Log would change Acre R heavily. Reminder, it was still called a group at this time. Yep, still that name. A few days later, Log would invite his friend, Lullaby. Mickey wanted to appeal Acre to Log, therefore she was let in. Log and Lullaby had known each other for 7 years at this point, and both of them had huge projects together. Log was very passionate about everything he did. Once he was locked onto something, he wanted to do it as much as he could. Therefore, when he saw flaws in Acre R, he would suggest improvements. Mickey liked Log, he really gave good company, and therefore Acre R was remastered. Log, Me, and Lullaby were made leaders on February 8, 2020. Revolution. A lot happened in February 2020, truly a lot. First of all, Log wanted to fully remaster the server. Firstly, to do this he would need to make different roles, and with permission from Mickey, he began planning the roles out. He got his friend, Shay, a young girl, to pick out which role name she liked the most, as he wanted fun names for this fun community. He made a hierarchy of 8 roles, CEO at the top, followed by chairman, creative director, manager, leader, mod, valued, and member. At least this was what was agreed on. Log said Mickey did edit a lot of the roles, and that's why they sound very corporate. Log and Lullaby both were working on a project at the time called Log's Log Rush 13. A game that had been in the works for 7 years. Both of them really wanted to finish it and had huge hopes for it. Mickey actually liked the idea, as Shad had gotten him into Sonic, and this game was a platformer game. Lots of motivation and love was driven towards the way of Log's Log Rush 13, but sadly the 2020 version only ended up into an alpha prototype, and we are still waiting on the full game. And then Acre got arrested for 5 years, however this would later be extended to 6 years. Acre was found out to be manipulating a young girl for his weird desires. He apparently demanded her for all sorts of pictures, and sadly she sent him what he wanted. He would threaten her all the time as he knew a lot about her personal stuff, and eventually he was caught as he leaked the pictures. I believe the girl may have reported it to her school, but I cannot find any archived messages of how he actually got caught, just people assuming why. Acre was not very active, as he had a full-time office job and was also a moderator for 2 Discord servers at the time. Therefore, not too many people cared at the time, but Mickey was a bit sad, however. He did get over it after he learnt that he was the only original founder of Acre R that was still in Acre R. After this, Log and Lullaby got to work on adding roles to people, which was checked and altered by Mickey. Everyone in the server was moved to at least valued, meaning the member role was not used at all during this time. Val and Darwin became moderators. Val was put by Mickey and then me. Lullaby and Log wanted Darwin to be higher, but Mickey disagreed. Shad was moved up to be a leader by Mickey and influenced by Log, and then Mickey gave me, Lullaby, and Log the manager role. He stated the creative director and manager would be decided later on, where we would do a democratic vote for who to get it. However, Mickey stated later in February 2022, but this did not happen till September 2022. This is believed to be the case as Mickey wanted as much control over the server as possible, as after the community worked together to build the server, Mickey still stated that he had full control over the server, and everything had to go through him. Over the new few months, Mickey would become quite a lot stricter and always took the voting out of the equation. However, in early March, a group was finally revolutionized. Before I mentioned a game by Log called Log's Log Rush 13, which would have a huge impact on the server between now and the mid of 2023. At last, Log presented that we should truly make this a community space and stated that a group would not cover this. In Log's Log Rush 13, the world, however, now a country it was based in, was called 3D Land. This place had its own language called 3Dish. Since the group at this time was mainly focused around Sonic and Log's Log Rush 13, and after years of name discussions, they finally named the group Acre R, Acre meaning acorn in 3Dish, and R was just added on to the end by Mickey. He stated he added this due to it being his favorite letter in the alphabet, but others had theories on why he wanted to name it this. One person theorized that the R was more of a rating system, that Acre was targeted at a more mature audience. Another theory was that it was named after the programming language called R, as it was one Mickey studied and used the most. There was a chance he was trying to transform Acre into some programming server, as a lot of people aspired to be game creators on the server. There were quite a lot of theories, but those are the main 2. The server was known as Acre mostly, as the majority ignored the R. 2020 was a very smooth sailing year. Due to the pandemic, everyone was off school doing nothing, so whether you were older or not, everyone was active. However, there was a lot of underlying issues in Acre. A set of rules was proposed many times, but Mickey always rejected them and stated there would never be any rules to Acre. He stood very stubbornly on this and never said why, but it would later be quite obvious, but people theorized on this at the time too. The members of Acre R really loved theorizing and looking deeper into things. A lot of people in Acre were huge fans of ARGS, and as I stated above, Darwin owned one, which is important for later. Currently, he hosted his ARG on Block 8 still with other people. However, as I stated, there were a lot of underlying issues with Acre. A lack of rules meant any content was posted. There were a lot of younger people on the server, and then people like Mickey who had multiple horrible addictions. At the time, he did not really share a lot of it publicly, but it was quite obvious Mickey had an addiction to adult content. It is unknown if, at the time, he was actually doing anything not legal, but he would occasionally make some comment against some of the girls on the server, and some of them were underaged. However, it wasn't just Mickey and Acre experiencing adult content, there was a lot of people. For example, I had my problems too. I knew a lot of bad people, and I was influenced into doing horrible things, which led to sharing this content in Acre. Of course, Mickey always didn't mind this content. People raised an eyebrow to him, but nobody had enough courage to go completely against Mickey on anything. I am not going to state many names, as some people do not want their names being discussed around this topic, as they have moved on and wish to go on a future without Acre, but most Acre members at the time consumed some kind of adult content, and a lot of where it came from was extremely sad. For example, one person also developed on Roblox at the time. Searching the word box on Roblox at the time would bring up absolutely disgusting models in the toolbox, and after inserting one of them and seeing all the horrible things, they were curious. I could say lots of horrible stuff about Roblox here, as a lot of the problems actually stemmed from this platform. This is just one scenario of how Roblox has sent young people down horrible rabbit holes, ruined multiple lives, and changed so many people. One scenario out of thousands, tens of thousands, I don't know myself, but all I have to say is stay safe on this platform. There is a lot of bad people on there, and I am glad it was raised up as a concern globally in 2025. Anyways, back to Acre R. The downfall of Acre R would begin around August 2020. From now on, I would say the server would only get worse and worse. Big was not very active within Acre R, and after interviewing him before this video, he stated that it was truly sad watching a community he had watched grow and overcome extremely hard times slowly start to fall into collapse, and to never recover. August 2020, specifically August 3rd, 2020, was the day I see Acre R truly started going downhill. It was the day Mickey and Martha started exchanging adult content within the server, and many people got involved in this. It was the day mature content was getting seen as acceptable in Acre R, as it began to shift to a more adult server. Some people disagreed with this and were disgusted by it, such as Log, but nothing could be done about it. Nobody wanted to speak up about it, as they didn't want to lose this group that everyone in it had built up over time. It was almost seen as their server, everyone's server, a collective server. The next few months would be chaotic, a lot of fights, quite a bit of mature content, and overall, everyone was developing very bad habits. However, the server was still, I guess, forming. At last, Mickey sent out the poll. It was between all members and who should get each role. People argued over this, as at the time Acre was very unstable and a small and minor role election sent the server into flames. However, in the end, the people who stayed neutral really showed. In September 2020, the results were shown. Martha would be moved up to moderator, as well as Jevel. Martha was liked by most of Acre R, but she was quite problematic. Therefore, people voted for her as they knew Mickey wouldn't really care in the end about who got voted, so practically from what I remember, everyone just vote who they want, but then thought of Mickey, and might have changed their votes. For example, Darwin absolutely detested everything Mickey was doing at the time. People thought he was one, if not the most, normal person on the server. After interviewing a lot of the early members of Acre, everyone stated they did vote Darwin. However, when the results were published, he had 2 votes. Somehow, this led to him losing his moderator role. Val was moved up to be a leader, even though she got 3 votes, which should have been a keep role, but Mickey moved her up anyways. Acre at this time was practically everything that happened was our choice, followed by Mickey's choice, therefore he got the last say in absolutely everything. Shad was moved up to manager, which was accepted by most people, and then, the big roles. Creative Director Role 3 and Chairman Role 2 were still up to be taken, and this is where Acre R really burnt. Louise was moved from Valued Role 7 to Chairman Role 2, and he was barely active. He was the 5th member of Acre R invited by Mickey. The actual results were leaked in 2025, and he apparently got 1 vote, even less than Darwin. Mickey absolutely rigged the votes and said he got around 10 Louise was barely active and was probably the Acre member people knew the least. This time, everyone agreed that Mickey put him in this place so he could keep ultimate power, showing how far Mickey went to keep his power. And thirdly, I was granted creative director, which was agreed by half the server. I was extremely confused at the time as I expected Log to get this role after completely changing the server. According to the real results, Log got a majority vote. Almost everyone voted for him to be creative director, yet he didn't. Again, Mickey probably thought I would never go against him as I was also invited by him and had known him for quite a while. Therefore, Mickey was still set in stone to have full control over Acre R. I asked Mickey to give it to Log and he said no, the people have decided. Due to me and Log being younger at the time, we took it lightly. Log accepted that he just needed to work a bit harder for that position, which he really tried to do. But Log was finding other interests at the time, for example a game called Log Fights a Monster, a story game he made on Roblox after finally quitting Blockade. October 2020 had one of the largest fights in Acre history. It was a brawl between Mickey and Darwin. Almost the whole server watched them fight for around 7 hours straight, constantly fighting over things sent, leadership, and rigged voting. At the end, Darwin was temporarily kicked from Acre but was allowed back the day later. However, he would be demoted to Role 8 member, therefore placing him as the only person with the member role. People would fight all the time during this time. Nobody trusted each other, they didn't know who to trust as Mickey was seen as a bad guy, yet everyone praised him and agreed with everything he said. There are theories that this put him into a false sense of security, and that he thought everyone other than Darwin agreed with him, and therefore brawls started in the server around how the server was being handled. There was one thing about Mickey though, he almost never stuck up to any of the males in Acre, only the females. He stated sexist comments multiple times and objectified women quite often. He saw them as his toys he could exploit for his own desires. Mickey, who was 22 years old, met up with Martha multiple times as she was off school, Martha being 16. After interviewing Martha, she said they did do a lot of adult acts, but she stated she thought it was normal at the time. Both parties enjoyed it, Martha even still saying it was some of the best times she has ever had in her life when nothing mattered. And then, November 2020 hit. The server was extremely active, the most active people usually being Log, me, Lullaby, Mickey, and Martha. Log usually started many of the conversations as he was a very excited young lad at the time. He wanted to share his work with everyone. And then, nothing. On November 22nd, Log went silent for a week straight. Nothing was sent in Acre from him, no sign of him being online. People actually got concerned about him, that he had gotten into some insane situation. Whether he was alive or not, people were confused. However, Log would come back on November 30th with a huge message. He had been very close to a girl called Shay. She was very young, 5 years old, and he treated her as his child. Her family was in a horrible state, and he was the one who cared for her a lot. He was also the one to name her, and honestly, giving a young lad the permission to name their child. Log had always been curious about Shay and saw her as some wonderful creature. Log was quite lonely when he grew up. He played Roblox on his own with his online friends most of the time, occasionally with one of his real friends. He wanted a sister who would actually play with him on Roblox, and Shay was perfect for that. He wanted to raise her how he wanted and for her to be part of his project circle. Currently, it was just him and Lullaby was beginning to become very secluded too. She began being a lot more gothic. She was going through a teenage identity crisis at the time, and also started consuming some of the content shared in Acre R. Sadly, on November 22nd, a car accident occurred, taking Shay's life. She was 5-year-old at the time, and she really meant a lot to Log. Log was absolutely distraught when this happened, and even nowadays he struggled to talk about this situation to me. And yes, he told me to specifically mention this. This is not made to offend or upset anyone, and permission was granted from Log to share this information. Shay's passing shook Acre heavily, and finally, after quite a few months, Acre was actually united. Everyone wanted to support Log during this difficult time, and many events were set up to help Log deal with her death. On December 2nd, her sister, Yuki, joined Acre R and was immediately moved to a manager to try to appeal to Log. A fundraiser was set up to cover costs of her funeral, and donations from Acre R alone reached £2,000. A quarter of this was donated from Mickey, sharing how he had gone through similar situations and wanted to help out as much as he could. A large portion was also donated by Shad, and I also donated about £200. By the end, Shay had an amazing funeral, and she will be remembered in many people's hearts in the future. Sadly, Yuki did experience some other traumatic events after this. I will not get into detail about these though, as Log told me to not discuss them, but in the end she was rehomed into a much better family and now lives an awesome life and is best friends with Log, still to this day. Over the next few months, Acre would be a decent place again, but it was only a matter of time when everyone would forget about everything that happened and it would go back into total chaos. In February 2021, Shad invited Yeo, his girlfriend, to the server. She was seen as one of the stranger members as she was a huge role player, and the role plays she did were very mature, which definitely transferred to Shad. Following this, in March 2021, Val invited her friend, Chan, to the server, who would get on very well with Log and Yuki. She would receive the valued role within a month. And then the server went into complete chaos again. This time, rather than arguments, people were just spamming the most diabolical media and sharing mature content. After analyzing Acre R, I found that once one person started something, it would just cause a chain reaction throughout the community. In April 2021, Martha was tired of Acre R, therefore she resigned as a moderator, and this was given to Chan. By tired, she didn't like how it was being run, but this was unknown to Mickey at the time. She made a sister server to Acre R, however, on Discord. This server was called Purgatory, a server targeted primarily for inappropriate Roblox models at the time. Yeah, it wasn't good. Almost every member of Acre R was sharing some kind of explicit material nowadays, and Acre R quietly became a server for adult content. Throughout 2021, not much actually happened. Compared to other years, it was definitely a quieter year, as I see it at least. Sending explicit content was becoming normal, and it just happened now without any question. Throughout 2021, people did their own thing. For example, Log continued his creation skills in Roblox Studio, and I got really into art. There was also someone in the server who joined quite a while ago who was being a lot more active recently, called Jevel. Jevel got on well with Log, as both were Undertale and Deltarune fans at the time, and he was interested in Log's Log Rush 13, which was still in development at the time. In May 2021, Louise stated that he did not want to be chairman anymore, as he stated he was wasting a position. And for once, Mickey did actually agree with him, as he stated that nowadays he did dream of the server becoming more community-run. This marked the day Acre R would go through its ladder climb cycle. The first time, one person was moved out, the person below would be moved up, and etc. became chairman, and Log was promoted to creative director. It would stay this way for a while. Throughout 2021, the addictions got worse and worse in some people, and others drifted away from Acre a bit, for example Log. By December 2021, Acre R was only a third as active as it was in the previous year, so Mickey wanted change. He wanted to bring Acre R truly back, and by this he released his plans for a 2-year roadmap. He was going to assign tasks to everyone which went towards their interests. For example, he gave Log a Roblox Studio task. His goal was to build a game for Acre R on Roblox. By doing this, he also wanted to improve his relationship with Darwin, and stated that the 3 that would be working on the project would be Log, me, and Darwin. Log had other plans though, as he was busy with other games at the time, such as Find the Crewmates and his YouTube channel. Others were tasked with similar things, just tailored towards them a bit more. However, the only issue was that Log wanted Lullaby to help him with the game, yet Lullaby refused to ever go on Roblox as she saw it as a pathetic children's game. Log and Lullaby kind of strayed away from each other during this time, and it led to Log's Log Rush 13 falling off a bit. Of course, they were still great friends though. She just started getting into other things. And that was flirting with men on Discord servers, adult Discord servers, not just any normal Discord server. She began to enjoy teasing herself and started loving adult content. Her dreams changed from being a game developer to being a girl who does adult content, and this would only be fueled by Mickey. Darwin had not touched Roblox for around 2 years at this point, and he wanted to do this project, so before making the ultimate game, he decided to revive his ARG, which was now the original King ARG, later known as the Victory Road ARG. The Victory Road ARG officially started back up in August 2022, and August 2022 was the time where Mickey's dreams lied. The hell period. Acre R officially recognizes the time between August 2022 and March 2023 as the Hell period. Log didn't want his other friend group getting involved with Acre R, as he had watched how it had changed Lullaby, who had known for 10 years. At that point, and now she was making weird content online. Log continued moving forward though, but was tainted by Acre R. I had been changed too by Acre R, as now Acre R was practically just a space for adult content. Throughout 2022, we had 3 members join: Tanya, Baller, and Ruka. Tanya and Baller would have a large impact on Acre R in the future, but first, we must cover the behemoth of a section. The Hell period was seen as one of the worst times of many of the members' lives, as it just got worse and worse. By October 2022, Acre R had gotten through the cracks of Log's other group. Log wanted to shield his other friends from this group, but it had ultimately failed. I talked to a lot of his friends at the time, for example Alyssa, who I would say was the most involved with Acre R at the time. Many people would develop fetishes and kinks in Acre R, and they became more desensitized day by day. This included Mickey, who had completely gone back to his old habits at this point, and now he had started watching content that was not appropriate at all. Acre R groomed many people into doing horrible things, and in November 2022, me and Log we were told that we should start our game. Original's Victory Road was still going on, and it was getting very weird. The bosses became horrible things, such as the Giant Man boss, which had nothing on. This led to the iconic moment known as Milk Overflow, where Alyssa was stood on top of a Ferris wheel, and she thought that the milk, which was a different substance produced by a man, was gone, and therefore jumped into it. Milk Overflow is still a running joke to this day. The early versions of our games were being made, and at the start, it was practically just a strange prototype of a condo game. The games would always get banned, and we even saw moderators live joining the game and then the game getting banned a few seconds later. This would be important for the future, as 2 people would take note of this for the future. We came to the conclusion that if we wanted some kind of weirdness in the game, we'd have to hide it, and that's exactly what we did. We took the Roblox starter place and created the masterpiece of Snail Finding Simulator, a game where you just run around and find snails. However, in the mountains, there was a cave, bringing you to an area with beds, tables, and animations. And the tank, of course, can't forget that. Many Acre members and non-Acre members used these, and the amount of people that was shown this horrible creation was insane by the end, as multiple people that should have absolutely not seen it had been exposed to this content. During December 2022, Yuki officially left Acre R, the only thing nobody really noticed. Not even Log at this time. This just shows the absolute insane effect that Acre had on people, and all people did was make fun of Shay in these days, making Log even more unstable and just driving more horrible stuff. Darwin did also work on Snail Finding Simulator, but not too much. Eventually though, Log would begin to get disgusted over Snail Finding Simulator. He began to see through the wall, and everything he wanted to do before had been crushed. All his friends had been exposed to this horrible stuff, and sadly, he saw it as all his fault. Log pressured me all the time to remove the horrible content, and over time it was moved more and hidden. A water layer was added with a Knuckles morph from Sonic, and below that was a cave. Eventually, a rock wall was added. Snail Finding Simulator and Victory Road both started fading into obscurity, but the thing that truly hit the nail in the coffin was Log. Log's old game, Find the Crewmates. He told me he was scrolling through his old games and saw one person on the game. He decided to check it out as he didn't think anyone still played his crappy old games. He met a person called Ultra, a person who would completely change everything at this time. Log wanted to change his ways, and he did. He put himself on a weekly update schedule to get away from Acre R, and he followed it from then to even now. The amount of dedication Log has for this game, due to seeing one person online, beats anything I have ever seen before. He even updated the game while he was on holiday in Iceland. Find the Crewmates would begin to grow, and a community would begin to form. Snail Finding Simulator was forgotten about, and soon enough, Log also forgot about Acre R. Log talked to his new friends about Acre R and painted everyone in it as a horrible person. He told me that he was absolutely crapping on Lullaby and me one time to Ultra while in the sewer area in the game. Which honestly, at the time, he was right to do that. We had been changed so heavily by this. However, Log was still doing things behind the scenes. He was still watching certain things and engaging with other people. For example, there was a group chat between Shad, Log, and Ali where they roleplayed. They also made that one Sonic roleplay server Shad dreamed of like 4 years before on Discord. The server ended up just being used for spamming inappropriate content though, and for Shad to engage with Log's new friends. Slowly though, throughout 2023, Log did slip away from Acre R, but as he did slip away, a target was put on his head. Okay, but let's rewind back to late 2022. There are many reasons why Acre R went through this horrible period. First of all, Mickey had a very strange obsession with getting other people to do what he wants, and then asking them to show him the things so he could watch behind the scenes. This led to every message ever sent in Snail Finding Simulator being recorded, and someone probably has that file somewhere when it was exported. There are no logging scripts in Snail Finding Simulator nowadays though. Mickey planned everything out, and he wanted to target Log's friend group, which did work, and some of Lullaby's friends, which work at all, as I don't think he thought that out fully. But the result made him happy enough, as he now had many videos of something he had planned, working to its full extent. Snail Finding Simulator was extremely active between December and March 2023. Lullaby never actually helped or got involved with Snail Finding Simulator, so I do not include her in the Snail Finding Simulator lot. However, Snail Finding Simulator led to a lot of after effects. We officially recognized the time after Snail Finding Simulator between March 2023 and November 2023 as the post-Snail Finding Simulator era, where a lot of people moved over to Discord. However, this era included some of the other people who only watched Snail Finding Simulator, such as Jevil, Baller, and Shad. During this era, many group chats were made. As I stated above, Shad finally got his dream Sonic roleplay server. There were many group chats, a lot of them containing me, Log, Lullaby, Shad, and sometimes the others. Big Chan and Tanya also were there a few times. I used to screen share to Baller and Jevil and basically tear the group chats up. I always used to get muted on Discord, as Log reported a lot of the stuff I did back then, as he wanted to get away from me as much as possible back then, which I guess for good reason. This led to me making so many accounts, and a few people started collecting my throwaway accounts in their friend list, as I know Log has quite a few. Overall tough, these group chats also started dying, as Log was actually trying his pure best to keep everyone away from any Acre R member. The only person who engaged with any Acre R member without Acre R forcing themselves upon them was Alyssa, due to the sheer amount of group chats she was in with Log and Shad. However, this does not count the roleplay server, as some people such as Zed and Ewan were also in that server. By September 2023, Log had managed to keep himself strong, still weekly updating Find the Crewmates and having that dream community he always wanted. He kept Acre members away from the game as much as possible, even banning many Acre members and then blaming it on something else, like an issue with the kit that auto-banned the people. Don't know how anyone believed this, but they did. He even banned some of his closest friends, such as Darwin. We kind of did see Log leaving Acre though, and therefore we prepared for it. We were manipulated into despising Log, but not by Mickey. Mickey wasn't even in Acre anymore. Mickey had stopped being active in May 2023 after many of his projects had been breaking down. His projects that he loved and adored, such as Snail Finding Simulator, people were starting to paint him in a bad light, and many people chose to see Mickey as a horrible person. This led to Yuki leaving in December 2022, as Log encouraged her to get away and that Mickey had ruined the server completely. Mickey was doing all kinds of horrible stuff, and we can infer that he did realize what he was doing was horrible, he just couldn't stop it. And at last, he was so far gone that he said goodbye to the world, and the day later, he wasn't alive anymore. This was quite unexpected, and nobody really noticed for a few days until his sister would contact us about his death. This led to the next shift, and the logical thing to do was to put the person with the second role as the CEO, which was me, and I gladly took that role. Log was offered the chairman role, which he rejected as expected, therefore it was given to Shad, who was absolutely ecstatic at the time about getting it. Now we wanted Log to stay in the community, therefore we noticed Log and his friends would be playing with someone called Brick Eater recently. Therefore, we made an evil version of him, recreated his games almost perfectly, and then added an ARG spin to it. This worked as Log and his friends played the game without releasing who was actually running it. We contacted many of Darwin's old workers and got them to help out with this, such as Z and Fuzzy. However, before going ahead, we first need to look back at the other side of Acre R during Mickey's needs. The amount of horrible things he did during late 2022 was absolutely insane. This was called his roadmap, as referred to earlier. He obviously got me, Darwin, and Log to do Snail Finding Simulator and originally Shad, but he also got Louise, Martha, Shad, and Yeo to continue developing Purgatory. He wanted it to his liking, and actually he wanted to use it as a financial option too, as he decided it would be good to make a subscription feature. The sad thing is, this may have been the actual only success Mickey had during this time. He kind of forgot about Snail Finding Simulator a bit. He never even joined the game once, only viewed from videos, screenshots, and screen shares. I could have seen it as being a lot worse if he did. Instead, he focused on Purgatory as it was truly the thing bringing in what he wanted. Purgatory peaked at 6,000 members during 2022. Mickey actively engaged in weird conversations with multiple people in that server. As stated before, Purgatory was a server targeted towards Roblox content, the weird content, not the normal stuff. People would share files and videos and all sorts of horrible things. Eventually, Mickey realized he had built up a server with horrible infrastructure, therefore they moved servers. Servers costed them about 2,000 members, but the subscription members were not the ones who didn't care about the server. They moved to another server, a lot more organized, and with this Mickey set up a leak server for only fans, gave quite a lot of free content, more than a normal server to be fair, all contributed by Mickey, Shad, and Martha. But about 30% of the server was locked behind a $5 paywall, 30% was free and 40% was premium content, $10 a month. Purgatory could have easily took all the funds, but instead they decided to give 30% to Mickey due to his requests. They wanted Acre to stay as well, therefore they gave in to him after a lot of discussion. Mickey wasn't too publicly active within Purgatory, but he did talk to members privately, people he liked the look of. He got the ownership of the server to favor him a lot too, always boasting about him. It was one of the things he wanted and demanded people to compliment him in some way, usually inappropriately, at least 5 times a day, but he usually pressured people into doing it, so it was more like 8 to 10. Purgatory would thrive throughout early 2023, being quite active up until 2024. The member count began to increase slower and then remained the same. People were being invited still, but people were leaving. The server was quite dead. The event that really put the nail in the coffin is the more popular server, the leak server, got taken down and the old server was archived. Now only the modern server where barely anyone posted other than people using bot channels. It was a shell of itself, which led to a lot of the Purgatory members moving to Acre. Purgatory would finally begin to start experiencing a lot more raiders, so all invites were closed in 2025. And a few months later, around May 2025, the server was archived. Then in sometime in late 2025, every channel was deleted. Purgatory technically still exists due to this, but not in any shape that it was in before, as there is literally 0 channels. Now, what about the other people? During December 2022, there was also the people who Mickey set up to do crypto for him. I am quite unsure what happened here, as it was kind of the section of 2022 that went really wrong. But from what I know, Jevil, Baller, and some others got told to invest into crypto under Mickey's surveillance, and they did. If they got good deals, then they would take 10% of the profits, as it was Mickey's money, and after a few small gains, info completely crashed during January 2023, and Mickey lost a lot of money. He demanded the money back from the people who were involved in the crypto scheme, but first of all, he was the one advising them what to do, they were just more monitoring it. They warned him when it began to fall, and he didn't care. Now he blamed them for screwing around with his money when it was basically his fault. Plus, a lot of the people were minors and didn't have any jobs. Jevil barely even afforded food at this point, yet alone paying $1,000 for what Mickey lost. Mickey would demand for money from Acre due to his anger from this situation until his death. A few small donations were given, but nothing half as much to pay back the amount he lost. Now the crypto thing was small and failed miserably. Snail finding went okay, and Purgatory was amazing for Mickey. The other people he had were all girls, and therefore he made them all his play girls. He would demand for them to roleplay with him, and most of the time it was in some really disgusting scenario. A lot of these girls were minors too, which just made it even worse. Some people like Martha raised the questions whether what he was doing was wrong, but he said he didn't care at all and that he believes everything he was doing. was given to him by God, and therefore it was right for him to be doing it, as God gave him the tools to do this. Which, in any religion, this is an absolutely ridiculous statement. Some crazed mixed religious beliefs does not give you the right to do horrible things to young children. However, a lot of people believe he didn't believe in it himself, he just wanted an excuse that would shield him a bit. And of course, Acre didn't care, so nothing really happened to him because of these disgusting things. He would ask for less and less when he was going downhill according to some people, but his tastes changed often, and the roleplays he would do went from being a lot more predatory to the type of roleplay which involves weird actions and poop. Yeah, this guy was absolutely disgusting, and I honestly am glad he is gone, and he definitely deserved it. And of course, this only left Lullaby, who would go on to start her own page online, which Mickey and some Acre members got free access to. During January 2023, she would do the iconic Spike Challenge, which was Mickey's idea in the first place. Mickey did not really approve of the Spike Challenge though, as he thought she would be using something actually sharp, and as he was really a freak, expected that she would do exactly that. Thankfully, she used harmless things, nothing that did harm her, but it did affect her till the modern day. At last, that is a huge section done. Now what happened during the post-2022 period? Just a quick recap, Log moved on to working on Find the Crewmates, and we all kind of expected him to leave soon. So to get him back involved with Acre R, we all set up Corruptedus. Shad was made chairman and I was the CEO. Log was still the creative director. However, during August 2023, he would drop this role. Darwin would also leave the server during May of 2023, he sent out a huge statement saying how much harm they did to his name and his game was absolutely ruined. He would move on to do more ARGs on another account called Trident. He would continue mostly using this account for a few years. Now, in August 2023, the guy who we copied the game from really was sad and was scared about us copying his game. He would add random parts and features to make sure we weren't copying his game. We did not have the tools to completely steal his game at the time, so we didn't actually replicate these changes. We tried as much as we can, but nobody could be bothered to look through his game to find the minor changes, so it became quite obvious we wasn't making a one-to-one replica anymore. In revenge, Shad brought up the idea to start making inappropriate accounts and pretending to do weird actions in his game. After this, they would spam report the game until a moderator would join. This is now patched and does not work anymore. Shad gave Baller the manager role after supplying him with so many tools and accounts that made the game banning process so much easier. Baller had been working on so many programs prior to this due to his dream to become a computer engineer. Shad would also encourage me to move Yeo up to manager around this time. He had been dating her for the last 8 months, and these two would shape Acre a lot over the next few years, especially in around a year. Going back to the copy of Brick's game, we were quite annoyed at how nobody was even giving into our ARG, and none of them cared. It had been debunked that the game wasn't copying it, and honestly, from the looks of it, it just motivated them more into working on the game. This led to us wanting the game to be gone, therefore we managed to get the game taken down. I wanted to stop here, but it seemed Shad had quite a grudge against Brick and his friends, and rather than targeting Brick him, Baller and Jevil started mass taking down Brick and his friends' games. During this time though, Roblox did manage to patch the report thing due to large YouTubers like Creekcraft getting banned over it. However, he realized that in Brick's reuploaded version of his old game, admin was being sold. Baller took this opportunity to import horrible things using B tools, and this did get the game taken down one last time. However, after this, only a few things were successful surrounding Brick, one which we'll get into later, but currently we weren't having much luck. However, that was only with Brick. We did successfully get Log and his friends to begin getting involved with Corruptedus, and Shad made an amazing decision to include Brainrot in the game around October 2023. He encouraged us to add things such as Skibidi Toilet, as he had a lack of knowledge around Find the Crewmates at the time. He thought that because it was an Among Us game, he thought Log's new friends would be into Skibidi Toilet and Brainrot stuff, so that's what we did. The Corruptedus account was managed by Shad, me, and a few other Acre members at the time, including Jevil, Baller, etc. At this time though, Log had become insanely inactive inside Acre, and he left Acre R in November 2023. He encouraged others to leave, such as Lullaby, but ended up making nobody leave at all. However, Log still fed into Corruptedus, and in November 2023 Log fully switched to Discord, completely deleting Telegram. He created the Find the Crewmates Discord server in November 2023. One of the reasons he stated was to create a new server for himself and his new community. Find the Crewmates was doing quite well at the time, and people did encourage log for a server, so that's what he did. Currently, that server is still active to this day. Months passed and Acre R did become quite a lot quieter without log. I did not really know what to do with the server other than host some events like Gardic Phone, but they usually went horribly wrong and it went weird a lot. Acre was decently normal throughout 2024 until April. April 23rd, the day that changed everything. I still remember reading the message. Everything Shad wanted to do now, Corruptedus, had faded out of existence. Corruptedus did not last long at all and was gone quite quickly. Shad had planned out loads of attacks on Log's server in game for May 2024, which I found at the time absolutely insane, but I thought it would be quite funny just to troll Log at the time. Sadly, this did not go very well. I thought it would have been a fun joke, but the rest of Acre R did not treat it as a joke. Shad shared he would be doing this to select members, which include but not all Jevil, Baller, Martha, and Yeo. There was probably more, but it is lost to time. The joke officially started on May 12th. Shad had some alt in their server for a few months and scavenged a certain message, which was simply Log is a terrorist from the server. He wanted the first attack to be a raid on their server on May 10th, where all of Acre R flooded their chats with this message, just as a warning, but he realized that this would be stupid, and he wanted to stay quite secretive at first, and that Acre was not behind this. Therefore, we sent a few alts in to find the crewmates that just started spamming Log is a terrorist. This was it, but Shad decided to go further and immediately join another Roblox game called Find the Roblox Players and talk to the people in that game about why Log is evil and they should hate him. Sadly, his tactics were not good back then, and literally nobody believed him other than one kid. That game was practically just full of 8-year-olds anyways, aside from the developers who were actually smart and did inform Log about what happened, although not even knowing who he was when Shad joined. After this, Acre started raiding the Discord server, sending alts such as Rainbow Blue into the server and making ridiculous claims such as calling Lowpixel a hacker. At this time, me and a lot of the others just treat it as a joke, and Shad didn't seem to mind this or didn't realize. And then, me and Martha came up with the genius idea of making an exposed channel. Shad liked this idea, but I don't think anyone really wanted to make this serious aside from him, so we posted the first Mixua's video, exposing Log. The video contained some really stupid things. It was kinda believable at the start, but it would give a good laugh to Log and his friends, and really it was kind of there for that purpose. Shad thought the video was horrible and wanted us to do better. We told him that we would keep doing this, which he responded with a temper tantrum stating that nobody was on his side. Although during this time we were already working on another Mixua's video about Pleuris. Shad wanted change to the channel and demanded for ownership, but we wouldn't let him. Me, Jevil, Baller, and Martha decided to make another video, which we wanted to help meet Shad's demands while also not. We created some stupid figure of a guy, often referred to as the Afghan guy due to his Afghanistan flag profile picture, and we interviewed their server with stupid questions. Then, we posted it as the interview video on YouTube. Shad liked the idea of an interview video and us editing every single message due to how easy it is on Discord to do that. But there was one slight problem. The interview video wasn't serious at all, and this annoyed the hell out of Shad when it released. This time we even tried to hide it from him, and then Shad decided to declare the Mixua's project a joke, and that it should not be discussed inside Acre R, which now, he stated, was a chat just to prove to Log that his changes to Acre R was ruining and that he should be stopped. There's a lot of theories on why Shad hates Log, and looking on his doc, he stated a lot of reasons, yet a lot of the reasons he stated go against other ones, and I do really think Shad was going somewhat insane, as nothing he wrote made a bit of sense in his document about Log. The main one though is that Log left Acre R and abandoned Shad. They used to play together, be best friends, and now Log left Shad there to rot, as he stated in his doc. This sounds absolutely pathetic, but I find absolutely no greater reason. Another reason why I think this makes sense is because Log escaped the horrors of Acre R, whereas Shad just went deeper and deeper into the adult content sphere of Acre R at the time. He had this weird dream to take Log down, and my god, he was determined to do so. He stated multiple times that it was his life goal to take Log down for all the sins and horrible deeds he has done, and how he has just gotten away with it. Log did nothing bad and he was manipulated by horrible people. He was at a wrong place at a wrong time. Shad did a lot of horrible stuff to show his superiority over Log, actively making fun of his dead friend through multiple different ways. I know a lot of people watching this video will be from Find the Crewmates, so rather than doing a full summary of every single event that happened, instead, why don't we look at Shad's plans? I lost count, however. Shad's plans were all planned out for the raids surrounding Find the Crewmates. I will cover everything he did in his planning sheet and whether it worked or failed in the long run. First of all, we will start with all his original plans. This was updated over time, so obviously I can't go in chronological order, but I will try to go somewhat in time order. Originally, his first plan was to gather people against Find the Crewmates, raid them with proof of what Log did, turn his friends against him, and then overall make him resign from Find the Crewmates. Shad knew Log's dream was to have a community and a game that was reliable, and he had finally gotten there, therefore Shad wanted to target that. The Jackception situation I mentioned before, Shad's way of trying to turn people against him, he might have gotten a few kids saying stop Logi or something, and that's it. So overall, I would say this part was a failure. Following this, he wanted to make YouTube expose videos just to rub his name into the ground, and this ended up being handled by us, who dealt it as a joke. Although this was meant to be the second step, we still went ahead with it. This obviously failed, and even failed disastrously for Shad. Before this, Shad wanted everything to stay secret, and immediately everyone knew it was Acre R doing it. However, Shad did manage to get his name out of it for quite a while, as most people blamed me or Jevil or Lullaby, or even somehow Alyssa got her name into the accused people. Not even a part of Acre R. Anyways, after this, the situation got quite unstable. Shad wanted us to continue going with his plan, and everyone else wants to keep up with the jokes. So we kinda split up. I kept up with the Mixua's channel, which Shad refused to ever mention, and still to this day, he never talked about it in Acre R after he said he wouldn't. Shad was quite a stubborn person. When he said something, he would stick with it. Hopefully, prison taught him how to actually make moral decisions. However, after this, Shad found a different method. He worked with Baller and Jevil to try and take down Find the Crewmates, as the previous method got patched, so they decided to go with the European takedown method thing, the DE's AY method. This was where you reported something through to Roblox for illegal content. If you mass reported it back then, the person or game had a high chance of getting banned. This worked significantly better, as Log actually got banned from this. Not just once, but around 8 times. Yes, he was quickly unbanned, but we terrified the hell out of them, and they were taking screenshots showing the final memories of Find the Crewmates, and this made Shad so happy. And then it got patched. Shad was enraged. To combat this, he decided that we would fake Log's death and claim we were sorry for everything we had done and we had gone too far. Nowadays, I realized how disgusting this was, and truly that Shad was never ever right in the head, even if his name wasn't even in the drama at all until around a year later. We knew this wouldn't work completely and Log would come back eventually, so Shad just commanded us to spam weird content as everyone was gathered up in a server. Some people refused, so he just asked for their logins and he did it for them. Ended up with only Lullaby sending it, but this was probably Shad, however she can't remember. Me and some other Acre members continued making the Mixua's videos, and then Shad found another plan he could use. He updated his planning sheet, giving us a strict day of August 1st to target and take down one of Log's friends' games, called Find the Friends. A game owned by some kid called Iyad. Shad had successfully gotten him to believe Log and Ash was evil, and therefore Shad saw him as a weak person and therefore manipulated him. I screen-shared everything to Shad, and he asked Martha for some models from Purgatory, and she sent some, and we added them to his game, unlocked them, and since he was a kid, he had no idea how to remove them. This led to the game getting mass reported and taken down. He was banned for a week, however. Shad kind of lost out on this one, as usually people with inappropriate models in their games get terminations, which is what Shad wanted. This was used to try and scare Log's friends to show no matter what they weren't safe, but the kinda opposite happened. It just made them be a bit more aware, and anyways nobody would give anyone developer perms anyways in normal Find the Crewmates. So this kind of just showed a weak point with Shad and Acre R as a whole, as they needed developer perms now to do anything to do with taking down games and giving bans. Just to rub it in everyone's face, the game was made uncopylocked for anyone to download. Only a few people probably downloaded it, but the uncopylocked version was up for quite a while. After this, I published my version of it, which I actually kinda enjoyed working on. Shad told me that I should not have spent as much effort on it. I had a lot more plans. After this, I kinda started feeling bad because the kid completely lost his game and now I had an angry mob after me. I kind of realized that Shad was just using me as a shield for his own good, so to keep my relationship with Acre good, I kinda just stepped back. I would listen to Shad but would try to do as little as possible. This would keep somewhat of a decent relationship with Shad, however, it wouldn't be that bad to the point where Acre went into complete warfare, which I had witnessed many times at this point. Shad sent loads of propaganda in the server, showing how Log was this evil figure that had completely ruined them and turned them into these horrible monsters. He blamed a lot of Mickey's doings on Log, and some people believed it, as Acre was not very intelligent, as you might have seen previously in the video. From now on, I played the whole situation as a joke and did nothing that crazy. This led Shad to doing his own thing. He noticed that I wasn't doing things as well for him, so he immediately dropped me and went to ask Jevil and Baller for help, who thought this was kinda funny, but Jevil had a small urge against Log. They never really got along before this, and Log just thought he was weird. In August 2023, they also started doing Original King again, as they were quite bored. Sadly, I wasn't allowed to do it this time, as Darwin had a huge grudge against Acre R. Well, I don't blame him anyways. Log and his friends probably told him anyways. Although Shad was now demanding Jevil and Baller more, he would still ask me to do a lot of things. And one of these was, again, something to do with Roblox reports. The thing is, as I mentioned before, you needed strong permissions to get someone banned now. However, out of pure luck, they managed to mass report Ash and get him terminated. Not just terminated, he got hardware banned for the word fatty. Yep, you heard this right, Ash was banned for the word fatty. This is actually real, and I don't even know how this happened. I am pretty sure this is one of the worst Roblox ban reasons in history. It doesn't sound real, but I swear this actually happened. Shad had an actual party watching everyone freak out and Log trying to help Ash appeal, and then it got rejected. Still to this day, Ash has not gotten his account back. Shad sees this as a cool accomplishment, and then everything changed. My plan was to keep the server at peace by having an okay relationship with Shad, but not openly refusing to do what he does, but that changed. Shad made a poll asking the server who would run better as a leader. This would stir up some drama between members, but overall Shad actually did have quite a landslide victory with a score of 44 compared to my score of 19. The rest did not vote. People did not vote in the poll to stay neutral, however a lot of those people saw Shad's leadership skills, and I was described as just a lazy owner who did nothing. Shad had plans to fully revolutionize the server and state he would completely wipe all of Log's work onto the server, to transform the server into something new, something it should have been, and something closer to what it originally was. I kind of fought it first, but after listening to Lullaby how it's absolutely pointless and it's just going to cause hellfire in the server, I officially dropped my position of CEO on my birthday, the 31st of August. I was moved down to chairman and Shad was moved up to CEO. Shad immediately shared his plans to more people on the server. Shad would begin editing things. All the credits to do with Log and his projects were removed, including everyone affiliated with him such as Yuki and Shay. Acre R was officially renamed to Shad's Acre R, although literally nobody ever referred it to that. The subtitle, which was a 3D space, was completely removed, and the roles were also renamed to everything but what they were before. The roles would be reverted after like 2 days though. People really hated them and they are so ridiculously bad. Keep in mind, he changed the top role from CEO to God. Yep, he saw himself as God. Following that, we had King instead of Chairman. Pretty sure this is because Shad thought it was cool to be medieval, as he used to talk in a badly formed Old English when talking professionally, as he stated, although the professional people usually were Log and his friends. Nice one, Shad. Below that we had artist instead of creative director. Okay, what? A creative director does not have to be an artist. This makes absolutely no sense at all. Next, VIP instead of manager. Okay, what? Very important person over manager. I don't even think he was trying at this point. Nobel instead of leader, admin instead of moderator, and user instead of member. Although this was reverted after 2 days, Shad still called people by these roles sometimes, especially referring to himself as God Shad. He really was obsessed with himself. So practically all influence from Log was kind of gone already, although there were definitely cracks that he couldn't close, such as the roles as stated previously. Following this, Shad decided to go on an alt called Joshua to spy on the Find the Crewmates server. He would get his uncle Isaac, who was quite young and a programmer, to make macros for him, and using these he macroed the two hardest obas in Find the Crewmates, Congregation, and Heliopolis. Shad then made a realistic Roblox animation which pretended to be Log and Chan. It looked like the actual snail finding simulator, and that it wasn't just done with models, and people believed it heavily. Log was interrogated by multiple people such as Pleuris and Ashran. The Joshua account would eventually be found out to be false and banned from the game. This would really enrage Shad. Shad then went back on everything he said he would do after and decided he would do a new plan which he had technically already started. A plan to individually try to pick people off of the game. First, he targeted Pleuris by getting Baller to gather many alts and dislike the game in bulk. This would actually work and Pleuris temporarily left the server. Sinister did a European strike thing and got one of Shad's accounts taken down due to its inappropriate username. Multiple people started leaving for their safety, such as PX, Safe, and Nat, plus the others mentioned before. Following this, Shad saw Log as weak and decided he wanted to try and get some personal information out of Log to blackmail him. To get this, he asked Tanya, as he knew that her and Log and Alyssa had talks before this about personal stuff. Tanya refused, but as soon as he said he would pay £50, she accepted his offer. Tanya sold her account to Shad for a whopping price of £50. Shad got most of his money from fundraising in Acre R or from Isaac Piper, his uncle, donating him money to fuel his hatred against Log. But who is Isaac Piper? In my opinion, Isaac Piper was the only important Acre R member who wasn't part of the original 16. Many of the people after the original 16 came and left. Around November 2024, Shad would open Acre R to the public, and more people were being invited by many different people. Some of these people were just high-ranking people in Purgatory, brought over by Martha, and others were Shad's friends, who supplied him with many tools and resources to wage these attacks against Log. One of these being Isaac Piper. Shad realized around this time that his independent raids were doing absolutely nothing to the community of Find the Crewmates, and kind of just made them stronger. Acre R felt a bit of disappointment and loss of hope during this time. But when Shad found out Original King opened up his applications again, he immediately jumped onto an alt and began applying for multiple positions. Original King showed me Shad's application, and it reads, "Greetings, Darwin. I have become extremely interested in working for Victory Road as I have past experience with working with YouTube ARG series and would always love to join a Roblox one. I have read all the documents supplied, and I would be really excited to help you on your route with your old reunion of a group, and hope I could serve as a nice, interactive character. I will happily be a supportive female character, and I will do this through being myself, Diana, in the game. I used to work in a bar, so I thought it would be funny to go back on the days and be a bartender at a pizza shop in Victory Road. The upstairs of the pizza shop would be my house, and the investigators would have to talk to me for potions and information for the future. I will fulfill the position of being a lovable character, as hopefully I could pull off being charismatic towards the investigators for a sort of character for people to fall for, creating good chemistry within the Victory Road space. I also believe I would be good due to my gender. I see that your game doesn't have many females in it, so a bit more diversity would assist the case. I have done professional work before, and I really enjoy acting. I have a large skill set, so if you ever need anything, feel free to contact me. I could build it for myself if you wanted me to, or even script. I don't want to waste any of your time, so I'd love to do this for you. I have experience on Roblox development, and I can send you some of my builds in DMs. Therefore, I would really love to take this position, as I have been bored recently and would really like something to do to entertain myself. I'll fund the account with Robux, no need to do that. I'll help and support you in any way I can and hopefully can make Victory Road a great place. Thanks, Diana." Darwin thought this review was awesome and agreed with almost all the points that this person stated. Sadly, this person wasn't a real woman, nor a professional actor, nor a developer or anything they stated. This person was just Shad. After being accepted, Shad would build the pizza shop area with all the assets needed to be published by Darwin. Darwin would add the pizza shop, however. Shad did add a backdoor into a weld into a bed, which was not discovered until the day before Diana would be kicked out of the team. When Victory Road restarted, Diana was introduced in late December and at first was okay, but then she started giving love potions and stuff. Again, a bit dodgy but nothing weird. It only got really weird when she made some of the people do insanely weird things, such as massage her back for 20 minutes. It did not look like massaging and just put the person in an embarrassing position for being mocked by their friends. This was one way Shad wanted to break the community. Through this, he also wanted to transform the community into a weirder place. If he got Log or any of his friends to be weird, it would encourage them to join Acre R and show that he did nothing wrong. In the end, nobody joined Acre R and everyone, though Acre R was the worst place on the planet, even during Diana's peak. Diana was a character based off Tasha from Treasure of Nadia, and the name came from the actual character called Diana from the same game. Shad would also push for more things linked to this game just to make it even worse, such as a mining-themed thing which contained totems. These totems were based on the talisman system in Treasure of Nadia. He did this to try and get Darwin to add things based on the Treasure of Nadia, so one day he could expose him for exposing this stuff to kids. The Diana situation just weirded everyone out, and eventually people were just like, this is really disgusting. This led to Darwin having an investigation on the person. He found the backdoor and then analyzed it to find that the person who made this was Shad. He interrogated the person and they claimed they were actually Lullaby. Lullaby was another Acre R member, and he believed this, then she was kicked out. However, it was later found out that Shad had just used Lullaby as a cover-up. Told me Lullaby herself, Shad used her without her permission to cover his acts in Victory Road, and Diana was actually Shad. We do have actual proof that this was Shad due to his document being made semi-public by his family and shown to the world how bad of a person he was. Now, 2025 had started, and Shad had run out of ways to do things once again. He now had to develop more plans, and quickly. The first thing he decided he was going to do was demand for permission of the Mixua's account. I refused, and then he told me I should give Jevil access to it. He had made a deal with Jevil where if he did most of the forefront attacks, he would be promoted in the server, something he wanted for a while. Jevil used to act a little weird and unstable in 2020 to 2024. But now he was really important due to his skills in computing, as he previously worked in a scam call center in his city of Mumbai. Jevil lived in the slums until 2026, so he went there for money. He dropped out of school at 13 and had absolutely no chance to get out of the slums. He worked in a factory and then the call center where he learned a lot of technical stuff, and after looking at YouTube tutorials and practicing these skills, Shad decided he would be a good soldier, and Jevil was happy to do this as he wanted something fun in his life. He had a pretty bad experience at his call center, but he stayed there for money until it got shut down. Jevil was tasked firstly to make a Mixua's video with Alfie. The video started off with a serious tone made by Jevil who stuck closely to what Shad wanted. Shad dug up dirt onto Zed and Log, especially Zed, as Shad did used to share a server with Zed and was still in this server, one of the two only people left. The other person left was his girlfriend who didn't use Discord, so he practically had full control over the server, although she owned it. He scraped up an old message with a drawing that Zed was manipulated into drawing. At the time, he was not right in the head and thought it would be funny. It was a quick drawing and nothing serious or detailed, and he was very young at the time, so he did not know any better around these people. Zed was a victim of the 2022 situation, as he was involved in many of the snail finding simulator stuff, and he has truly helped us fight Shad through the years, which is why I see him as a great guy who has really improved since he was groomed. Now I got a bit of control over this video and added a few jokes in to hopefully cement this as a joke video and drive people from believing Shad's point of view. This turned out to be successful and led to Shad raging his head off. After this, Ruka, the 16th member of Acre R, decided he didn't like Shad anymore. He began to talk about how targeting children for the last 7 months was an absolutely horrible thing to do, and he should just get therapy and abandon this situation and give Alfie owner back. Shad took this absolutely horribly and decided to absolutely smite him down. They argued for 4 hours straight, and it ended with him getting kicked from Acre R. He was the first person to go around telling people about how bad Acre R was and to avoid it. However, this only led people into the trap of entering Acre R. Sadly, it didn't go too well for him, and he didn't end up spreading that Acre R was a horrible place, and now he has cut contact with absolutely everyone from Acre R and deleted his Telegram account. Nobody knows where he is, if he's still alive or what, but if there's the odd chance he's watching this, thank you for fighting against Acre R, and I wish you the best of luck in the future. I hope this video has reflected what you wanted at the time. The time hit February and Shad had another plan up his sleeve. But this time, it wasn't an original plan. It was a remix of the first plan he did. Sadly, I don't know too much about this era as it was out of my reach. I got arrested around this time for an insanely stupid reason. In the Find the Crewmates server, there was a guy called Fox VT. This guy played Find the Crewmates, but behind the scenes, he was ranting about everything to do with the game behind the scenes. He was sharing private content from the server and sending the reputation of Log down the drain, specifically towards a community called Find the Chomics. The first person to notice this was Darth Mondo, a member of Find the Crewmates. However, the moment he told the Find the Crewmates server, Log and his friends knew, but this also meant Shad knew. It was a race now between who could find out more about Find the Chomics, Crewmates, or Acre R, and honestly, for once, I think Shad did win this. Log and his friends immediately went into their server, asking them about everything that happened and why they were doing it. They made jokes about them, and this just provided Shad with evidence. Behind the scenes, Shad was talking to higher-ups in Find the Chomics, including Complexuality, Buzzing Builder, Gup, and Gogi. However, we suspect there were more people, but we do not know. However, we do suspect that one of these people was Fedoric himself. Fedoric had randomly posted about the game with absolutely no context behind it. This makes me think that Shad did contact him behind the scenes, but he kind of just took it as a joke, but he approved everything Shad did. Now, Shad had Find the Chomics on his side, and they swore not to say anything, leading to Shad actually having a large force on his side. However, Find the Chomics never really took this serious after the start. They saw it as some stupid joke. Shad would then begin to mass raid Find the Chomics with his accounts. At this point, he also bought Chan's account for £50, giving him even more accounts to attack with. He spammed advertisements to Find the Crewmates, the Discord server, and the game, etc. This made the Chomics community despise Find the Crewmates, and some even joined their servers just to be a bit annoying and confront them. Crewmates tried explaining to the Chomic community that it wasn't them, and blamed it on Jevil, Baller, or me. But they never believed anything we said due to the insanely complex history of Acre R. During this time, Ash got hacked on Discord again, and this just made the problem even worse, as Shad used his account to raid Find the Chomics, looking like we actually did something, due to a large member raiding them. With all this together, they all struggled to believe that this was real, and just thought Crewmates made everything up. Still to this day, they do not believe that Shad was the person who raided them at all, even after sending an essay with all the proof and information to them. With encouragement from Shad and the raids, they decided they would ban all the admins from the Find the Crewmates server, which they thought was the grand role. This led to like 30 people getting banned from Find the Chomics, some who played the game. This did annoy a lot of people, such as 4by. Shad then celebrated this accidental victory in Acre R. However, this came with a huge loss though. During this time, Find the Crewmates did actually conclude that Shad was a part of this and a large part of it. They didn't know he was fully part of everything, but they found out his account was being used for warfare against the game. This would lead to Shad deleting his main Discord account, leading to the Sonic Roleplay server having only Yeoin, whose account was lost forever. Soon enough in April though, Baller and I would reveal that Shad was the mastermind of all of this. Baller would get absolutely screamed at by Shad for stating this, and now Find the Crewmates knew that Shad was behind everything. They still hated Find the Chomics for the annoyance, but Shad was being linked to everything at this point. However, May was the turning point. Log was asked if he wanted Heliopolis to be added to a badge list, and he said yeah, why not? This was a grave mistake. It was added to the ultra-hard badge list 2 days later, and some people already tried going for it. Many people beat Heliopolis quite quickly, as a lot of them were pro-obby players from other games. However, this led to a huge influx of exploiters into Find the Crewmates. They did all sorts of things, such as crash Log when he joined to avoid punishment, and this inspired Shad. Shad now wanted to use Baller, a professional software engineer who had created his own AI, called Ball AI, which was capable of completely controlling your device and doing stuff on it for you. This was an insane accomplishment, as no other AI could do this. However, Baller did not want to release this due to him liking it being a private project. He allowed some people to have free copies of Ball AI. These people include Big, Alfie, Jevil, Shad, Martha, Isaac Piper, and some personal friends of his. Shad used Ball AI and Baller to assist him to make an automatic macro creation software for Roblox Abiz, which he used on Heliopolis. Shad posted this onto the Badgelist server, and this led to a huge amount of people getting Heliopolis. One man in the Badgelist, called Ultra, severely detested our game for an unknown reason. However, nowadays we believe that Shad did try and contact them like they did to Chomix. We know he tried contacting TK, the owner, and a few admins, but not as much as Chomix, as he thought that overall failed. Instead, he decided to play Find the Crewmates under a new identity called Christopher. Christopher would play Find the Crewmates for a few months and then eventually state that he had gathered evidence for the owner being a freak. He would show this to the Badgelist and they would get ready to remove Heliopolis. Shad then began to mass raid the Badgelist, and they already hated Heliopolis due to how it subverts the usual obby values, which is something a lot of people hate. However, Log loves. They said it could stay on the list if they were allowed to remake it. Log refused, as he wanted his game to stay his. Soon enough, Christopher was banned from the server, but his message stayed with them and they eventually removed the badge. Shad carried on mass raiding the server to the point where they even wiped it from the legacy list. We still get angry messages from some of them occasionally, and to this day they still talk about Log. During this time, Shad made many documents about Find the Crewmates, one being an exposed document from Find the Chomix and others being anonymous. These all ended up getting deleted in the end, and only one backup of one exists. Find the Crewmates would do pretty well then on, and Shad was beginning to lose hope again. The more he pestered Find the Chomix, the less they believed him. Zed, me and Log talked to the Badgelist and we got it sorta resolved. To this day, they still make fun of us in their server. However, in UHBL we only have one person who really hates us, and that's the Ultra Kid. Yet, he won't do anything alone, so this conflict was resolved. In July, this was a key point, as Big left Acre R for similar reasons to Log. He was sick of the weirdness and wanted to move on and not be such a freak anymore. He had also been quite inactive over the last few months, and when he left without announcing it, although Acre now had 100 members, Shad still began mass harassing Big. However, he would only do it constantly for a month. He couldn't focus on an individual guy and the entire Find the Crewmates server at the same time. It was way too much, especially with Shad's lack of support nowadays. He was mostly doing things alone, as nobody wanted to help him. This led to him having many meltdowns over how nobody trusted him and nobody saw him as a good leader. The only people who supported Shad greatly at this point were Isaac Piper, some new guys, Martha, Yeo, and Louise. Louise was quite inactive and Yeo didn't do too much to help with the drama. Yeo was Shad's girlfriend and still is. She would actually stay pretty neutral throughout the entire drama and only helped Shad emotionally and mentally. She participated in no raids, and I am pretty sure from the constant talk to Shad she just avoided it entirely. I have talked to her and she doesn't hate Log or anyone from Find the Crewmates at all. She's just happy both communities are at peace. Honestly, I didn't know this until recently, so that makes me quite happy. However, I will deep dive into every member at the end of this video, so I will discuss more about this then, along with Shad's original plans, or as he called it, Roadmap 2. After UHBL was stopped, Shad was running out of ideas once again. He still had good contact with Chomix, who didn't know who he was, so he decided to try his luck. However, he thought he had the most genius idea in the world. After he heard about the Schlep situation on Roblox, he wondered if it was possible to send Log a cease and desist letter from his crimes during 2022, and what he saw as harassment after 2022. If Find the Chomix approved of his lawsuit, he would have the money, allies, and brains to do something like this. After trying to persuade them for over 3 weeks, Shad got one man to approve of it, Complexuality. Complexuality, Shad and Piper sent out cease and desist letters under Find the Chomix to Log and Alfie. At this point, Alfie, Jevil, and Baller were all in the Find the Crewmates server. However, relationships between Acre R members and the Find the Crewmates community were very bad, as these people were known for being freaks and had raided them for over a year. Most people saw Alfie as pretty trustworthy, but just saw Jevil and Baller as goons who just wanted to screw around and cause chaos. And honestly, looking back, I think we all took this insanely unseriously. I think when we got hit by the cease and desist letter, that's when I started maturing. I started realizing how horrible Acre R had fallen off. This had started because Mickey invited me to what he said was a cool game group. Now I was a few weeks off getting a lawsuit. But before the lawsuit, Shad decided it would be funny to hire some guys to throw a fire bomb through my window. Thanks, Shad. It was made that poorly it didn't even go through. It bounced off, and even after bouncing off and falling at a high velocity, it still didn't explode. Nice one, Shad. This wouldn't be the last time of this, though. The police identified one of the people who did this, and he was a random guy who worked for a hitman service. This guy wasn't a legal UK citizen either. There were talks about deportation and everything, but I have no idea what happened to him. And then it happened. We were officially being sued by Find the Chomics. Firstly, though, we actually thought the lawsuit came from UHBL, but Shad was trying to send this externally to be confusing. As part of a lawsuit, both sides receive personal information about each other, allowing Shad to have a wider view of our personal information such as emails and addresses eventually. Soon enough, though, the real thing came. I sadly didn't get a physical copy as most of it was guided towards Alfie. They were using screenshots from 2021 up to 2025 as proof for Alfie, saying he had harassed minors, sent inappropriate stuff, leading to the scarring of Shad. And just to top it off, a few FTC members did join Acre R for a look around, which allowed them to state they had felt this pain too. At this point, I was certain I was going to get kicked from Acre R, but it didn't happen. Log left the original Find the Crewmates server in 2025 for multiple reasons. The number one reason was he just wanted a bit of peace. He wanted to remain in more private servers, and hopefully that would diminish the chances of raids. He said his mental health was deteriorating, especially because of the lawsuit. Another reason was the old server was an absolute mess. It was organized in late 2023, a log which was still struggling behind the scenes from the heavy effects of Acre R. I won't go into what Log was feeling during the post-Acre R era, but he was affected heavily behind the scenes, even if he didn't show it on the outside. Log tried hiding as much as he could about Acre R. He wanted nothing to do. Acre R wasn't even name-dropped in the entirety of the old server, showing the absolute severity Log tried hiding it. He would slowly come out a bit more over time, and now we are making this video to show the truth to everyone. Up to October 2025, Shad was slow. He didn't do much, as if he did he would blow his reputation and it could be used in court. However, this didn't stop him from doing a remote attack on Alfie's PC, trying to turn his PC into a firebomb itself. This time he actually got it to burn something. He turned his table black. Wow, again Shad, poor execution. We thought Shad would be going to court with us, but he wasn't even there. It was a person from Find the Chomics who didn't reveal their online alias, however. We presume it was Complexuality after his mentions of us after this, and their lawyers. With us, we had Log-Me, Rosie, our lawyer in the room, and watching was Yuki, Jevel, and Lullaby. No recording of the court case was made, due to Log and Yuki's extreme push against recording anything due to their beliefs. FTC tried pushing for it, most likely to show online how bad we were. However, their points were absolutely dog crap, and it felt like we prepared for absolutely nothing. Court ended early and they walked out with a strong loss. If we had lost, Find the Crewmates would have had to been deleted, along with anything linked between FTC and Log, potentially even including the username LogiBear999. Now court had finished and Shad was told he had lost. He reached his breaking point. After this, Shad faked his death. He said he had died and pulled up a video from one of his new friends from Acre R's expanding server, which had hit a member account of 130 at this point. The footage was extremely blurry and a faraway shot. It showed a man being wheeled off into an ambulance, seemingly dead. It was said to be Shad. It was confirmed this video was taken in the town which Shad lived in, increasing the validity of it. However, this would be debunked towards the end of November. Now, I must talk about Find the Crewmates for this to make sense. Find the Crewmates is a finding game on Roblox consisting of over 3,000 collectibles to find. They all range in difficulty, and Divine is one of the hardest difficulties. A crewmate was broken for a few months thanks to Roblox's moderation, called the Entire World Crewmate God. This was a crewmate long teased for around a year and a bit, and now it was releasing as a Divine. Many people wanted to be first victor of this crewmate, and Shad saw this too. He had an idea. Around late June 2025, Shad began researching Iceland. a country that he knew nobody from Find the Crewmates was from, and therefore he wouldn't be suspicious if he joined and acted strangely. He used an older account called Scabby Skibidi Lord. This account was used in the Corruptedus ARG in 2023, however appeared like once, so nobody recognized it. The username was slightly suspicious, but still, people went with it. Shad collected many hard crewmates in a short space of time, including the hardest at the time, Heliopolis. People thought he was the new best player, beating all competition at the time. However, this led to people thinking Scabby was Log's alt. There was a huge argument over this, and it led to Scabby leaving, saying it would be better to make the community better. He gave a very sweet message, and this led to many people really liking him. Soon enough, he would join back, and now he was with the Find the Crewmates community very strongly. He would go for entire world crewmate god and get first victor of it by quite far. Shad did this to infiltrate the community and test their boundaries of trust. He tried integrating himself into the community, and I think at one point he actually wanted to stay, but his true intentions were insanely horrible. He got these hard crewmates using Ball AI. He made macros and managed to use this AI to use specific exploit-like features to view things in the Explorer, making finding puzzles and steps insanely easy. Nobody questioned his abilities after the Log alt drama, as they all saw him as a friendly and honest person. However, it was in November when Jevil saw that Shad was actually online on Telegram, and Shad had reactivated his Ball AI subscription, which meant he almost certainly wasn't dead. Using Ball AI manager permissions, Baller could actually track what apps he had open, and he managed to see which Roblox games he was joining through when Roblox opened. The Find the Crewmates community compared this with their friends list and found out that Scabby matched it absolutely perfectly. The community would then interrogate Scabby, and eventually he would admit he was Shad. To get away with this 6-month stunt, he would try to empathize with Log, stating that he just wanted a community to be a part of. Most people actually believed him at the time, however. In Shad's docs, we later discovered this was just a reputation stunt to get people to like him. However, this would not last long. Shad would stay in the server for just over 2 weeks before getting banned. I had an absolute meltdown at him after learning that Lullaby had been assaulted due to plans made by his uncle, and later found out that he also had a plot in this. Rather than firebombs, they decided to go after my roommate now. They found out she was going to eat at Namo Eat in Brighton, and they attacked her down an alleyway, doing absolutely disgusting things to her. This was again more people who Piper had hired from Telegram. After this, everyone went against Shad, and apparently this pissed him that much he thought it was funny to send Jevil and Baller's addresses in the server. This is one of the many times he did this, but this time a lot of people were active. Because of this, he got banned instantly. He then went and had another meltdown in Acre R about how Log is the worst person on the earth, as he has brainwashed his friends into joining his side. During this time, Roblox actually sent a cease and desist letter to Purgatory, forcing Martha into removing all the channels in the server and rebranding it. Martha also got banned from Discord shortly after, most likely not because of Roblox, but someone who reported her. At this point, Shad was really starting to be unstable. The day after this, he began saying he's too scared to go outside because he saw Log outside his window earlier, which is crazy because he had never even met Log or knew what he dressed like. Shad was genuinely going insane at this point, and he didn't leave the house until early January. During December, raids slowed down and Shad just went absolutely insane and posted so much garbage in Acre R during the December time. Towards the end of December, Shad rewrote Ball AI's functions to create Shad AI. He programmed it so it would be stupid, so he could get some humor out of Find the Crewmates and hopefully sneak a spy account in. However, at this point there was tension in the Find the Crewmates community itself. Jevil and Baller were trying to appeal to Log at the time, trying to fit in more with the Find the Crewmates community, as honestly, afterwards Baller did talk to me about how he saw Acre R being banned as almost certain within 2026. Baller and Jevil are extremely close and therefore talk much more with each other than anyone else. They planned how they would stay in Find the Crewmates, but sadly they were still extremely immature at this point and ended up getting banned by Ultra in Find the Crewmates. Honestly, I disagreed with this decision at the time, but after looking back to the absolutely horrible jokes both of them made together back then, I can see why Ultra hated them. Disc Spy was banned by this point, so the only way he could get in was to have an account in there himself. However, he didn't realize that his time was running out. The month turned January and he had less than 2 weeks left. Jevil had reported Shad publicly to an Indian digital agency, who then forwarded everything to the police. The police had extreme interest in this situation and decided that they saw this as a global threat and decided they needed to do something about this. They contacted the British police, Telegram, Discord, and potentially Roblox. I say potentially as Shad's account seems to have been deleted, however, Piper may have just deactivated it. On the 11th of January 2026, Shad's Telegram account was deleted. Telegram also deleted his girlfriend's account. Shad had wanted to break the system, where Yeo, a manager, would be moved up straight to CEO if he was gone, but now Yeo's account was gone. I didn't want CEO again, so I was moved down to manager. This means Val, the creative director, would take CEO. Val gave the chairman role to Lullaby and Jevil would be given creative director. Due to the tension in Acre R at the time, not many people wanted the high roles due to fear of their Telegram accounts getting banned, or even worse, as the police were investigating them. But the role change was actually useless in the end. Around 2 hours after the role changes, the entirety of Acre R was taken down. The server was wiped and completely deleted. After almost a decade, Acre R was gone. But it didn't stop there, as about 3 hours after that, Shad's house was raided and Shad was arrested. He now resides in Wakefield Prison for 30 years, over many crimes found from Acre R. The groups that some of the Acre R members were in were being watched now, and thanks to Jevil's reporting to the Indian government, he actually found himself getting a job looking out for these horrible groups. This allowed him to get enough money to buy a small apartment and get out the horrible slum he previously lived in. Now, what happened after Acre R? Well, Find the Crewmates absolutely thrived for the next 5 months. Everyone was extremely happy and they were finally free from the horrors of Acre R. No more Shad, no more drama. The only few bits of drama was first of all the Free Jevil movement. This was to combat the point where Jevil had been banned. Jevil really didn't want to be banned and he felt like he was in a similar position to Shad, but he saw himself as someone far better than Shad. To redeem himself, he tried so much. He uploaded videos to YouTube, trying to promote the game. He helped the Find the Crewmates wiki for a bit and also helped log with the game a lot. He helped automate the manual farm system, helping log with a lot of hassle. At last, a deal was made and Jevil was unbanned. Nowadays, Jevil is very mature and I am pretty sure is even a moderator in Find the Crewmates, although he is not very active due to being more active on Telegram. And extremely recently was a large drama. I wasn't going to include this as this script was written way before this, but I guess I'll just add it onto the end. Find the Chomics still absolutely despise Find the Crewmates, and when Find the Crewmates got banned, someone who I am not allowed to name so this video doesn't get taken down decides that it's their time to shine and try to cause drama. All over log not removing a few words, by the way, absolutely pathetic. There was a big Twitter post about Crewmates, and many people joined Crewmates to find out what happened and interrogated log. The game racked up a few dislikes in the time, but the damage wasn't too bad. While the anonymous person was raiding, they were stating that Complexuality would never admit to the court case, and he still publicly hasn't. However, this drama was solved extremely well by Log, Zed, and others, thanks to the Find the Crewmates spirit. This drama is now resolved and Find the Crewmates is back in peace again. Well, there you have it. The summed up history of Acre R. Now, I wanted to provide a quick summary of every original 16 member in Acre R and how they changed. I interviewed almost every member and I'll be talking through their views and what happened individually with them. They all gave me a score of their approval rating of log from 0 to 100, with 100 being a great guy and 0 being the worst person on earth. So first of all, Alex. Well, there's really not much to talk about with this guy. Most about him was covered early on, but he was the original founder of Acre R. He was the main leader up to his death in 2019. I could not get a score from Alex as he is dead. Next, Mickey, the second main leader and potentially the most iconic Acre R leader. He is by far the longest standing Acre R leader, being around 4 years. Mickey built the foundations of what Acre R would become, and he allowed Log to design the server into his liking, which allowed for the server to grow a lot. Mickey was an extremely twistest guy, and he had so much he wanted to do so he could grow Acre R. His most iconic project was the roadmap, where he split Acre R into different groups. He led Acre R under all 16 members and was seen as a strong leader. The roadmap led to the creation of Snail Finding Simulator, which is a notorious game in the modern Acre R spaces and Find the Crewmates community. It allowed for horrible things to go down with miners, however, the game was cleared up over time thanks to the Crewmates community. He also launched the Purgatory scheme, which brought him quite a lot of cash, and a crypto scheme, which failed. He also had many members part of his ERP scheme, which allowed him to really show his fetishes off to the public, showing how much of a disgusting guy he really was. He died, therefore he did not provide an approval rating. Next, we have Luke. Luke is one of the most iconic Acre R members, however is usually forgotten due to his short amount of time in Acre R. Luke had a weird thing for decomposing babies, and decided that he would replicate this in real life, leading to his arrest as he was caught extremely quickly. I am presuming Luke is still alive and in prison for life. Sadly, it was impossible to get in contact with Luke, plus he doesn't even know who Log is, nor would I want to talk to someone as disgusting as him. Next, we have Ak. Ak was the final founder of Acre R, however, he did the least to contribute to the server in my opinion. He was more of the gamer of the server, and kind of stayed away from the public weird stuff as much as possible. However, it still ended up with him being arrested for 6 years, but due to his arrest being 6 years, he is out of prison now. He is a very interesting guy to talk to, and is obviously extremely insane, and I don't know how long he's going to last out of prison, and he might already be back in there, but when I was talking to him, he already started making weird things about Find the Crewmates, like drawing seagulls and crewmates with big. You know what? Ak did actually give an approval rating about Log, although he couldn't remember him much. Ak gave him a strong 70% rating, saying that anyone working under Mickey and contributing to his space was a great person. He also sees the problems that Log overcame to show him as a good and strong leader, so thanks to Ak, I guess, for allowing me to interview him. Next, we have Louise. Louise was a young French teenager who was always very inactive in Acre R. He was more of the experimental member, seeing how adding people to Acre R would go. He kind of failed in this position, as Big is now seen as the member after him. Louise, however, was only quite active during Mickey's roadmap. He was one of Mickey's good friends, and he wanted to help Mickey in every way he could, and probably with a bit of pressure from Mickey, he agreed to help Martha set up a Roblox server for inappropriate models. Although he had never used Roblox before, he was quick to learn the basic stuff for helping Martha with her condo-type stuff. Other than that, he barely did anything. He would give Log an approval score of 15% due to strong leadership, however Louise fully supports Shad. Now, Big. Big was the first of a certain era of Acre R, the first of the Sonic fans in Acre R. For some reason, Acre R was like a magnet to these guys. Big would stay as a valued member the entirety of Acre R, however he would be quite an active member up till around January 2024. He was very close to a lot of members, and was an extremely chill guy. He was given the crypto scheme, and I don't think giving a 13-year-old a crypto scheme was good. Big did absolutely nothing for the roadmap, as he knew how absolutely nothing around crypto worked. Mickey would fail on his task to get everyone to do something, as Big mostly just role-played with Log on Discord on this time. He is one of the only members who was more active on the Discord side of Acre R than the Telegram side of it, the only other member being Martha. Big was a cool guy and nobody hated him other than Shad. Towards the end of Acre R, Big gave Log an approval score of 80% now. Martha is someone who still has extreme pride in Acre R and especially Purgatory. She was quite a cold and quiet teen when she first joined Acre R, however, did end up getting promoted to moderator. Shortly after, she was moved down back to Valued, where she would spend the rest of her time in Acre R. However, she would have other concerns, as in August 2022, she was tasked in the creation of Purgatory. She would take Purgatory as her greatest project for years to come. Purgatory was a server where people could share their Roblox condo maps, models, and animations. The server was also a widely known server for distributing adult content. It had many channels for this, and it was all for free mostly until Mickey demanded her to make a subscription-based system for some of the content. She complied with Mickey happily, wanting to get some money out of it. Each monthly subscription was originally £10 until it was raised to $15 in 2024. During Mickey's era, Acre R made around £16,000 from subscriptions. This meant around £11,000 went to Mickey and £5,000 went to Martha. The rest got very little as they were paid through Mickey's portion, and Mickey took quite a lot of the money and spent it on expensive Gucci products as he thought he was the coolest person ever. After Mickey's death, all funds went to Martha. However, she only ended up earning around $10,000 from then on, which was far less customers than before, but still quite a lot. She would end up storing a lot of this into a savings account, which would have built up quite a lot of interest by now. I guess that is quite a smart move, to be fair. She also used some of the funds for her student accommodation when she went to university to study beauty. At last, Purgatory split into Purgatory 2, which also split into a leak server, which also had a subscription-based system. This one gained around 6,000, however it was taken down quite quickly, and it is suspected other people got cuts from this. However, Martha denies it and says she set up everything, which I doubt it, likely due to the sheer amount of content in these servers. After this server got shut down, Purgatory 2 began dying again, and then eventually it was closed down. Martha is still very patriotic about Purgatory and would like to soon set up Purgatory 3, as she said in a private interview. Martha does not trust me at all though, and wanted an interview with Find the crewmates themselves. After the awful interview, she gave Log a score of 1%. Nice. Martha is still fully aligned with Shad and Mickey and sees them as doing nothing wrong. Next, we have Val. Val is the shortest running permanent leader of Acre R, being at an amazing 2 hours after she dethroned Shad. Val is also the first and only female to ever be the CEO of Acre R. Val is a very interesting person. She proposed many ideas after joining, such as the Acre Family Charity. Val has a disabled sister, who suffers immensely due to her being a congenital amputee, as she was born without an arm. Val has always wanted to raise money for people similar to her, and wanted to kickstart a charity off after Purgatory began gaining money, seeing Acre R as a way that could be used to raise money for good cause. However, Mickey refused to donate any money to charity and claimed that the money him or Martha earned was his and his only. Martha also stated a similar rhetoric, as she didn't want to donate anything either. Eventually, Val gave up on trying to get an Acre R charity started. Val tried doing many projects in Acre R, but she got continually denied. Val is an extremely nice girl, and I am glad she was the CEO of Acre R for at least 2 hours, as it's all she ever wanted, to repair this place from the ground. She battled through the effects from 2022 and changed so much, even without leaving Acre R. Val also wanted an interview with Find the crewmates. However, this was just to see what Log had made now, not mistrust. And the interview went extremely well, and Val gave Log an approval rating of 100%. Next, it's Shad, but I'll leave Shad to the end for a reason. Next, Jevil. Jevil is an extremely interesting guy who lived alone from the age of 14 to the modern day. He lived in a slum in Mumbai for his entire life, aside from nowadays where he now lives in an apartment thanks to his job, which came out of getting Shad arrested. Jevil has great ties with the Indian police now, and they will happily investigate any issues he has with Telegram online. Thanks to Jevil, Shad was stopped, and without him I don't think we would have been able to do it. He was the one who pushed for his arrest and got an actual serious response from the police department, which somehow I was never able to get, although living in the same country as Shad. Jevil went from an immature, disgusting and changed person in 2022 who wouldn't stop talking about wanting to carve shards into his body, to now a strong ally who has really helped us defeat Shad and overcome problems. He was once attacking crewmates, and now he is the only person who has ever been allowed to help Log with something on Find the crewmates since January 2022. Jevil rated Log a 100% approval rating. Next we have me. I don't really know how to talk about myself, so I gave this one to Log to talk about. Hey, so Alfie has helped our community out so much, and I am so happy that we have had Alfie for over a year now. After reading through this script and seeing how much Alfie really wanted to get away from Acre R, I am glad he did that, and I am very proud of you. You've assisted our community so much after changing sides in 2023, and I've watched you change so much. After overcoming 2022, which was absolutely tragic for both of us, I can really see that you have changed inside. You are now a man who is there to help others, help his friends, and make moral decisions. Rather than just playing life as a joke and sticking up for Acre R, I think you even making this video in the first place just shows how good of a guy you are, as you're known as having a bad reputation for this, yet you still make it. Thank you so much for raising awareness about Acre R, and there's so many more Acre Rs out there, and hopefully this video allows more people to understand what these groups lead people down, and how it changes them into being a horrible person. Thanks to you, Alfie, you may stop many people from falling into this horrible rabbit hole. Thank you again. Saya, I would also give Log a 90% rating. I think he is a strong leader to go through all this, but there is still stuff to improve on. Next is Darwin, also known as the original king, Trident, and Darkry. Darwin is known for his former Roblox ARGS, including his Blockade ARGS in 2020, Victory Road ARG in 2022 and early 2023, late 2024 to 2026, Trident in 2024 and 2025, and Darkry in late 2023. He was quite quiet in Acre R and never was too active, but if something happened that he didn't like, he would oppose it strongly, and usually this would get him into quite a lot of trouble. The iconic milk overflow incident happened in his game, which he thinks is funny but doesn't really like being known publicly for. A lot of Mickey's overviewed ideas happened in this game, such as how he wanted to encourage multiple miners to be freaks with each other during this time. They happened in Snail Finding Simulator, Victory Road, and Bloxburg. Original King mainly stayed with Victory Road though, however, he did privately work on Snail Finding Simulator. He coded most of the ideas, I built them, and Log hid the stuff. Original has now quit Roblox due to their new updates making it impossible for him to practically do anything anymore without giving away personal information, and he is very inactive on both Discord and Telegram, as he is a very outdoor person nowadays. Darwin gave Log an approval rating of 80%. Now, Log himself. Log is definitely one of the most ambitious members of Acre R ever. He built the foundations of the actual server, transforming it from a group chat to something unique. Acre R helped him make his ideas come true, but also sent him down so many awful rabbit holes. Log hated the inappropriate stuff in the server, but soon fell to it after Lullaby, his best friend at the time, also did. Log really tried his hardest to make this server as best as it could be, but Log had zero experience with dealing with freaks at the time and just went with what happened mostly. He didn't challenge anything. Log was ambitious about everything though. Even when Snail Finding Simulator got given him, he knew he was being manipulated into making this a horrible game, but somehow he wanted to put actual effort into it. He added chests with new gears in, added an actual finding element to it, rather than just a hiding game. He played it a lot and avoided a lot of the weird stuff. He pressured me over and over again to hide it more, and I did give in, and even though Log was pretty young at the time, he was still insanely powerful. Log tried to make so many things his main project. He was working on so much at the time. The passion this man has is something I wish I could achieve someday. Still having motivation to work on something even though you know you're getting groomed isn't absolutely crazy. The hierarchy Log made wasn't just him either. He made a list with all the roles and got his young friend Shay to pick out the ones she liked. Many of these roles were recycled into Log's other projects over the years, such as the valued role being used in Find the Crewmates. Even after Snail Finding Simulator died and Log hated Acre R, he still tried to get the best out of people and still talked to me for a little while. Acre R was stopping his motivations at the time and he left. What a powerful man. Lullaby is also quite similar to Log. Log met Lullaby while playing Club Penguin over a decade ago, where he shared his plans for the 13th installment of the Log's Log Rush 13 series. Lullaby was very passionate to work with Log and they made a good duo. Log would drift kinda away from her though, as Log got really into Roblox, whereas Lullaby refused to ever work on Roblox. However, they still stayed in contact through Telegram, and when Acre R opened for Log, he immediately asked if he could invite his friend, Lullaby. Sadly, Lullaby fell very fast to Acre R through Mickey's disgusting manipulation. She was such an innocent girl before, and a year later she's doing spike challenges for Mickey. However, Lullaby has gone completely cold turkey recently when it comes to this, as she really wants to actually work on Log's Log Rush 13. Log is happy for her to do this, as long as she stops doing weird stuff. Currently, she has done it once in about 50 days, which is an insane deal after she did it up to 10 times a day for 4 years straight. I don't feel like I'm living in an apartment anymore where one room is just for a freak. I feel like I have a real roommate now, one that I care about and one that cares about me too. She lost her mind because of Mickey, and I'm incredibly happy that she is coming back to being a better person. Lullaby gave Log an approval rating of 100%. Now Yuki. Yuki is also one of Log's longtime friends, however, he would only truly bond with her after Shay's death in November 2020. Yuki is the older sister of Shay, and Log really needed someone to adore as much as Shay after that incident. Yuki's family was in shambles after Shei, and she spent so much time with Log and they really bonded very well. To this day, Log still sees Yuki as one of his best friends. Yuki was one of the first people to leave Acre R, mainly from Log's influence. Yuki didn't have much influence on Acre R in the end, but more of a huge influence on Log and some of his friends. Yuki also gave Log an approval rating of 100%. Yeo, Aka Shad's girlfriend, Yeo is honestly a decently okay person nowadays. She helped Shad plan a lot of things but never actually helped him with any physical thing. Yeo was extremely empathetic towards Acre R and really supported anyone who needed help. However, she was quite rude to some people, especially if Shad didn't like them. Shad talked to her behind the scenes about how she should act towards specific people, and out of fear of harming their relationship she did just as he told her to. Yeo visited Shad quite often, but Shad was extremely oppressive in real life too, and when she did come around, he would assault her for doing even the slightest thing wrong. Yeo's account would be banned with Shad's, however she would return to Telegram on a new account a week later and make a server called Acorn Reform, however, this was closed quickly. No large attempt to make another Acre R was made after this. She would give Log an approval of 35%. Chan was someone very close to Log for quite a while, and she actually did really love Log back in 2022 and wanted him to date her. However, Log constantly refused due to his desire to live on his own, and he especially didn't want any under 16 dating. Even back in 2022, he had this mindset. Talking about the foundations of logism is an entire different video though, which may happen, as we are actually analyzing this quite deeply. Chan would return to Log in 2025, where she would play Find the Crewmates with him for a bit. However, this was just so Chan could check up on Log and their community, nothing harmful, but it wasn't meant to be permanent. Eventually, they didn't talk again, and Chan sold both her Roblox account and Discord account to Shad. Using her Roblox account, Shad made a fake setup in Snail Finding Simulator and used her Discord account for raiding and spy purposes. Chan gave Log a 65% approval rating and would like to talk to him again, but said now is not the time. Next, we have Tanya. Tanya stayed a member for her entire time at Acre R. She joined during the Log hierarchy and did not change roles at all until the shutdown of Acre R. Tanya was quite active in Acre R and enjoyed her ERP sessions with multiple other members. Tanya was bisexual, so she also did these with some of the girls in Acre R too. Tanya still does this but less and outside of Acre R. However, Tanya is very open nowadays and sees Acre R as a mistake that should have never happened after it changed her so much. She's now trying to start her own server called Tan Inc, a server focused on beauty and fashion on Telegram, nothing inappropriate like Acre R. Tanya gave Log an approval rating of 50%, but did this as she hadn't really talked to him in a while, and the last proper conversation she had with him wasn't in the best of conditions during March 2023. Penultimately, we have Baller. Baller is a very interesting guy. He was quite inactive in Acre R at first, however, over time became more and more active. He is studying robotics and computer science in education in Latvia, and he is specifically keen on the AI sector. He has created his own AI system called Ball AI. It is an AI technology which can take over your computer and automate things for you, which is insanely useful but also extremely scary. Ball AI is not a public product for this reason, but I'm sure someone will do it eventually. Only select people have Ball AI, and licenses can be purchased for around $100 if you are close with Baller. Baller was the only one getting involved with the crypto scheme, although he was young too. Ruka and Big screwed it up as Baller did actually do some good investments. Baller is an extremely talented young man, and I am sure he has a great future ahead of him. Baller is very close to Jevel, me, and Log, but he's currently in another drama which I am not going to talk about, so we're not dragged into it. Baller gave Log an approval rate of 67%, which I'm pretty sure sums up his entire personality. And finally, Ruka, a silent warrior in Acre R. Ruka would stand up for a lot of things and would rival the big leaders when things went wrong. Other than that, Ruka was quite inactive and then completely disappeared from the internet. That's pretty much it, to be fair, for Ruka. Couldn't get a score because Ruka has disappeared from the internet. Now, the final part of the video, Shad. This script has already gone far past what I wanted to hit, and I still haven't done one of the biggest sections, so here we go, I guess. Shad was a young man living in Brighouse in the United Kingdom. Now he doesn't, as he's in life in prison. Shad was invited by Big into Acre R on the 29th of April 2019. After a month, he was immediately promoted to a leader, and then when Log's hierarchy was put in place, he stayed as a leader. In September 2020, he became a manager. Shad was one of the people who really helped Log during November 2020 overcome his sadness from Shay's death, and now saying Shad helped Log in any way is the most insane thing ever. Shad was very loyal to Mickey and saw him as a great role model at the time. Mickey tasked Shad with helping Martha with Purgatory, which he tried to help with. However, rather than helping, it seemed that Shad actually just engaged with the Purgatory community and loved viewing and rating the models and maps they shared. This actually led Shad into being more involved with Snail Finding Simulator, as he was interested in how we created it. Shad thought Snail Finding Simulator was a poor performance though, and said the condo games he had were far better. Maybe this was a sign that Shad was going to take the crown eventually. After Snail Finding Simulator, Log left, Shad wanted revenge, and you know what happened then. But Shad had a very thought-out plan, and I'd like to go through that now. Shad stated the day Log left, "This day we have been betrayed, left, and forgotten by our member. We have been abandoned for a new group, and I swear revenge upon Log." After this, Shad began working on his plan to stop Log. His first plan was to gather a community up, which at the time he wanted to find the Roblox players. However, this changed to find the Chomics later and then ultra hard badge list and then back to find the Chomics. He tried his chances with other games, but these were the ones who gave him the most attention. He wanted to gather a large amount of people against Log so he could do some of his bigger tasks requiring a large force. One of his ways of getting a large force was this, or his other idea, expanding Acre R. However, he knew he had to be careful with expanding Acre R because the more people he had, the higher the risk of being banned was. Acre R struggled to cope with 180 members, yet alone the 500 Shad wanted. This wasn't successful in the end. However, if it was successful, Shad's second part of his plan would have gone through. His second part was just to keep worrying everyone's hatred up against Logi, by making accounts themed around Logi and his friends and targeting specific individuals. With Ball AI, he could easily do this with a few tweaks. He had a huge budget from Piper, so he could easily fund it. If he managed to make his community that angry, he would begin to stage attacks against Log. He of course had the iconic firebomb attacks, which he tried to do but failed, however, on a larger scale. Finally, his final plan was to go into Log's house and end him. He hoped this would completely topple the crewmates community, and if not, he would send his men to their house and deal with them. However, as we know, many spanners got in the way, and his three-step plan became insanely larger. By the end of his plan, he developed so many problems. He was really patriotic for the traditional Acre R and wished to return to where it was just called a group. That much, he tried to act like all four founders in one. He really wanted to persuade Ock to join him when he got out of prison, and thankfully Shad went in prison as he got out. Shad would begin to develop an enjoyment in acting like the founders, and you could definitely see it. It's mostly known as Find the Crewmates drama or Acre R drama. However, Shad refers to it as the roadmap too. He sees his destruction of Find the Crewmates. Now, that was Shad's plan to take down Find the Crewmates the brutal way. He obviously deviated his plan over time, but he still wanted to follow the basic premise of the steps. He wanted to manipulate the higher-ups of community, get them to post about him, and make them think they had an actual enemy. Sadly, when it comes to big communities and the one guy usually doesn't win. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. Shad got a slight sway from a few Chomics members, but that was it. However, after his plan's document was revealed by his family, they also revealed his document for what he wanted. And oh my god, he said he didn't just want to end Log in his house, he said he would have fucked him without consent in every horrible way possible until he died. Then, he said after he was dead, he would deep fry him. Yeah, I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it just shows how mentally deranged this guy was at the time. Plus, he most likely said due to his love for deep frying babies. And yes, Shad never did get to deep fry any babies. His family kept his baby cousin away from him, and he always had an urge to be alone with it. I have no idea what Shad would have done if he was ever left alone with that child. Shad had many plans about how he was going to get babies, deep fry them and eat them, which according to him made him pure, and therefore he would be far superior than Log. Another thing that Shad did was goon to images of Log and his friends. He provided a table of everything he did, however. We believe these were over-exaggerates or the ranging is wrong because I don't understand how you can do that over 3,000 times in a year. Anyways, Shad stated in his documents that he did this because it would assert superiority over the people he did it to, as he was above them and they couldn't stop him from doing it. Like, what the hell? This guy was actually mentally deranged in every way possible, and I am so happy he is in prison now. However, after calling with Shad a week ago, it seems that he is actually improving in prison somehow, and stated that Log was a strong leader and he hopes he does well, giving him a score of 50. Welp, finally we reach the ending point of this wild ride. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it is incredibly long and some points may have bored you to absolute death. If you have any burning questions, please submit them in the NOOOOOOOOO server and I will try my best to answer them. I will also be asking these questions closer to the source, such as to Val and maybe even Yeo, just to make sure we get the full perspective of all these questions. Anyways, normal NOOOOOOOOOs will be back next upload. I only used a serious voice this upload for this style of video, and I hope you enjoyed and learnt a lot. However, we must realize Acre R is one of thousands of groups like this. In my time, I have seen so many different ones similar to this. There are thousands upon thousands of children being inappropriately manipulated by groups like these, and Acre R may be one of the more extreme examples due to some of the leaders' desires, but none of these groups are good, and they should all be shut down. Thanks to everyone who helped in this video and everyone who took action against Acre R, even if it went nowhere, and I hope you are all happy with what you have accomplished, and take your life as granted, as some people are struggling in groups like these behind the scenes. If you know anyone part of a group like this, it is not too late. Please talk to them, get in touch with the authorities, and again, thank you for watching.